Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. This is the City Council regular meeting. I am calling this meeting to order and giving notice to members of the City Council and to the general public that at this regular meeting, the City Council may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for discussion and consultation with the city's attorneys for legal advice on any item listed on the following agenda. Can we have roll call?
Mayor Daggett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Aslan.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember House.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here.
Councilmember McCarthy, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I would. Please stand if you're able.
Councilmember House, our mission statement.
Thank you, Mayor. The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, our land acknowledgement.
The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. Next up is open call to the public. This enables the public to address the council about an item that is not on the prepared agenda. Comments relating to items that are on the agenda will be taken at the time that the item is discussed. Open call to the public appears on the agenda twice, at the beginning and at the end. The total time allotted for the first open call to the public is 30 minutes. Any additional comments will be held until the second open call to the public. If you wish to address the council in person at today's meeting, please complete a comment card and submit it to the recording clerk as soon as possible. Your name will be called when it's your turn to speak. You may address the council up to 3 times throughout the meeting. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And the clock is right here. And first up, we have Dennis Givens.
All right, thanks a lot, Mayor Daggett, Vice Mayor Austin Aslan, City Council, staff, the crowd, welcome, citizens. I just wanted to read a passage from my favorite book, the Constitution. I've read it before. I just want to make sure that we're all reminded of it. Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right to people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And I'm here to read a story of a man who violated the First Amendment and wanted to establish a theocracy in the United States. Joseph Smith Jr., a Freemason, was an American religious leader and the founder of Mormonism and the Latter-day Saints movement. Publishing the Book of Mormon at the age of 24, Smith attracted tens of thousands of followers by the time of his death 14 years later. The religion he founded is followed by the present day by millions of global adherents and several churches, the largest of which is the Church of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church. Born in Sharon, Vermont, on December 23, 1805, Smith reported experiencing a series of visions. In 1823, he said he was visited by an angel, Moroni, who directed him to a buried book of golden plates inscribed with a Judeo-Christian history of an ancient American civilization. In 1830, Smith published the Book of Mormon, which he described as an English translation of those plates. The same year, he organized the Church of Christ, calling it a restoration of early Christian church. Members of the church were later called Latter-day Saints or Mormons. Smith and his followers established a new settlement in Nauvoo, Illinois, of which he was the spiritual and political leader. In 1844, when the Nauvoo Expositor, or it's like a newspaper, criticized Smith's power to create a theocracy and his practice of polygamy, Smith and the Nauvoo City Council ordered the destruction of its printing press, inflaming anti-Mormon sentiment. Fearing invasion of Nauvoo, Smith rode to Carthage, Illinois to stand trial, but was shot and killed by a mob in blackface that stormed the jailhouse. His last words were a Freemason's distress signal. In the words of Kanye West, no one man should have all that power. Thomas Jefferson, my favorite president, peace be unto him, stated, "Erecting the wall of separation between church and state is absolutely essential to a free society." Thank you for your time. Black Lives Matter. Everybody is matter. Stardust matter. And I just want to plug a small business. I'll be eating at the Hawaiian Barbecue Restaurant after the city council meeting, so if you guys want to talk, we can go there. And I just wanted to show you this $2 bill. I would pass it around, but I know you government officials might take it. Just kidding, but have a good day.
Next up, we have Dapper Dre.
Good afternoon, council members, mayor, staff. Just want to come express some gratitude first off. Thank you for all your hard work. You're here every week making big decisions for a lot of different things. I'd like to thank staff and whoever it was that worked on getting the funding for the grant to improve Butler for bicycles, as well as your decision to drop the speed limit. That was very nice. And also, just any other things that you have on the docket to improve walkability and bikeability in this town. We're still small enough geographically that it impacts a lot of people. And I'm thankful for all the work that everybody does here. Sometimes I wish that I could face the staff and not just the council members, because I think not only do they deserve a lot of thanks for their work, but also sometimes they deserve some of the pleas from us as public citizens. And that's where I get to the sense that I hear a lot, I read a lot. I read the ATMP, the carbon neutrality plan, the downtown improvement plan, the regional plan, went to the ADOT safety improvement meeting, and all of them are asking for trying to figure out what it is and how we make our streets safer, how are pedestrians still dying, how are bicyclists still dying on these streets. And I tell you that pretty much all of those statistics involve cars. They involve motor vehicles crashing into each other, crashing into other people, crashing into stationary objects. And so we need to think in the sense that we can at times and should be planning to not only slow down vehicles, but sometimes inconvenience them. We're never gonna mode shift, we're never gonna grade shift unless we all decide that we can do other things than just drive our cars. Again, it's bike month. I know some of you hopefully can bike to council. If you can't, do you take the bus? Do you carpool with one another? Do you use rideshare? Do you walk? Do you see what it's like for the 30% of the citizens of Flagstaff who can't own a car and what that means? And maybe you can encourage your entire staff to have an empty parking lot where everybody took the bus, because there's a bus stop right outside City Council. And if there's not a bus at the end of City Council for you, was that a problem on you for not bringing your car? Or is that a problem on our services that we should be allowing people to have access to all the time? Because for the last 70 years, we've produced and we always try to make things as fast as they possibly can for cars and as safe as they can for cars, and everything else gets left in the dust. If you walk out into the middle of the street and you look on either side of which way you're gonna go, what is it inviting people to do? It's inviting them to drive. It's not inviting them to walk. It's not inviting them to bike. So be invitational for all road users. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have 3 proclamations, and council will be coming down to the edge of the dais, and if you are here for the proclamation that we are reading at that time, please come down and join us. The first up is Municipal Clerks Week, and then Economic Development Week, and then Bike Month.
Center of attention.
We're used to being on the other side. We love being on camera.
Okay, so it's my privilege to read the proclamation for the Professional Municipal Clerks Week. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local governments, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local government bodies, and agencies of government and at other levels, and whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality, impartiality, rendering equal service to all, whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerks through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of the Professional Municipal Clerks. Now, therefore, on behalf of Becky Daggett, Mayor of Flagstaff, Arizona, do recognize the week of May 5th through the 11th, 2024 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerks and to all the professional municipal clerks for the vital service they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent.
Would any of you like to say anything?
Sure.
Come on.
Just wanted to say thank you very much to the mayor and council for the recognition. We are very fortunate at the city of Flagstaff to have a great municipal clerk team. We are very happy to not only serve our community, the community in which we live, and we take a great honor in that, but to serve this organization and to serve the mayor and council. So thank you very much for the recognition, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have anyone here for Economic Development Week? We're all here for Economic Development Week.
Mayor, we've got a couple of people online
Oh.
that have shown, there we go.
Hello, this is for you.
Thank you.
Economic Development Week is an opportunity to recognize and thank everyone and all businesses that choose Flagstaff, the city of innovation, to be their home. Economic Development Week provides economic development professionals a platform to showcase to their community the contributions made to their local economy throughout the year. Economic development practitioners work to create resilient communities with resilient economies. City of Flagstaff Economic Development rely upon area partners as critical team members with whom support, trust, productivity, and integrity are fostered every day. The network of partners enhances the Flagstaff experience for all. We may acknowledge a few of our tremendous partners, including the Economic Collaborative of Northern Arizona, Moonshot, Coconino County Economic Development, the City of Winslow, the City of Page, Northern Arizona University, Coconino Community College, the Greater Flagstaff Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Development Center, and the Downtown Business Alliance. The people of Flagstaff rely upon the Flagstaff businesses for continuous employment and for providing goods and services. Now, therefore, I, Becky Daggett, Mayor of the City of Flagstaff, Arizona, do hereby proclaim May 6th, 2024 through May 10th, 2024 as Economic Development Week. You want to take a picture of the screen? So thank you all, and would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have wonderful partners in our region that we're proud of, that we love to collaborate with. And we just want to thank you, Mayor and Council, for your continued support for the BBB-funded Economic Development Program. We could not do what we do without any of you, so we appreciate all of you. Thank you very much.
Anybody here for bicycling? Come on down. Feel free to join us. Bike Month. Whereas bicycling represents one of the most environmentally responsible, clean, efficient, economic, and healthy forms of transportation, and the City of Flagstaff and Flagstaff Biking Organization recognize the importance of a bicycle-friendly community, and Bike Month raises public awareness about the need to improve bicycle infrastructure in the community to encourage more people to commute by bicycle. And whereas bicycling improves air quality, reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and supports Flagstaff's carbon neutrality goals, and whereas bicycling enhances mobility and helps manage traffic congestion, and bicycling is an excellent low-impact aerobic activity that improves health and reduces stress, and whereas riding a bicycle helps all of us to connect to our community and feel a sense of place. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Mayor Becky Daggett, do hereby proclaim May 2024 as Bike Month in Flagstaff. Who wants to speak? I'll give you the proclamation.
Let's get it right quick.
Vice Mayor Aslan, thank you so much. Members of Council, Mayor Daggett, thank you for the proclamation. I'm speaking on behalf of FBO, and we just want to say thank you to our city partners, city staff in particular, Martin Ince, and leadership. It's been a great pleasure working with the city on a number of city efforts, and along with trail building and our partners at the county and at the Forest Service. So I'm going to pass the mic to Jolene, who's going to speak about Bike Month.
So yes, it's Bike Month, so please log your ride for the challenge the whole month long. We have great raffle prizes from our businesses in town. Go to our website, flagstaffbiking.org, for all our events too. Tomorrow is a big day with Bike to School Day and the critical mass ride with the ice cream social at Seacrest in the afternoon. And then we have next Wednesday, Bike to Breakfast. We have 15 businesses participating this year, which is pretty awesome. And then in another week, we have the Bike Bazaar at Heritage Square. So please come out and help and have fun. Ride your bike.
So if you are a local business and you'd like to make a donation, we are still accepting donations. But do ride your bike, enjoy this beautiful weather, enjoy Flagstaff and your community on two wheels. It's a different experience than being in a car. And know that you're contributing to the climate goals of the city while also helping congestion. So cheers to Flagstaff, enjoy riding, and especially as Councilmember or Vice Mayor Aslan said, it's a stress reliever. So if you're feeling stressed, get on your bike. Thank you so much.
All right, next we have our council liaison reports. I will start with Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. A week or so ago, we had our Mountain Line meeting with our budget review, and Mountain Line's capital budget is just over $70 million, and it includes 2 more replacements for electric buses, completion of Phase 1 of our Downtown Connection Center, completion of the Interim Connection Center, that's a portion of Phase 2 of the DCC, and the initial renovations of Casper headquarters to provide better maintenance facilities. Also, the SMART bill to edit eligible entitles to include transit agencies has passed and been signed by the governor. This bill provides an opportunity for state funds to be used as local matches to any federally funded transportation project. The city was already an eligible applicant with these funds, and now Mountain Line has access to this opportunity as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
At this time, I don't have any liaison reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. There were two commission meetings during our budget retreat last week. I wasn't able to attend them in person, but I do have some updates for you. For tourism, the major component of the meeting was a discussion about the water rate study. So Aaron Young was on hand to go through all of those things, just part of the city's ongoing outreach to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on and has a chance to weigh in. There were also just some pretty standard reports from Lowell Observatory and from our director and staff about some of the things going on around town. For sustainability, the commission appointed Amy Wolknowski as the new chair and Mary Metzger as the new vice chair, and the commission also began working through an equity assessment of the Neighborhood Sustainability Grant Program. And that assessment is a tool designed to help identify areas of strength and opportunities for improving equity in their work. There was also a Coconino Plateau Water Advisory Councilship meeting that I was not able to attend. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember McCarthy.
Well, thank you, Mayor. You, Mayor, and the Vice Mayor and I, and a team of staff people went back to Washington, D.C. last week. We met with Senators Sinema, Congressman Gallegos, and others, and a lot of staff people to talk about continued funding for our important projects like Rio to Flag flood control, forest restoration, et cetera. In my opinion, the meetings went very well, and it was pretty intense, one meeting after the other, but I think it was productive use of our time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sweet?
Hi, I am in Miami. I hope you all can hear me. So I am attending a NACTO conference. It's a conference that focuses on multimodal transportation. Adam, if you're still there, I know you'd be jealous. I just met with the Bloomberg Foundation and had a chance to learn from other cities on projects similar to what we're doing in Cheshire. And it was a great conversation about some lessons that they've learned. And I'm very excited about the project. It's kicking off here soon. So that was a lot of fun. And an update on Mountain Line, the CDL training and testing facility is complete. Very excited on that. And the ribbon cutting is happening this month. And Mountain Line and NEU have already begun using the driver training. And a quick reminder that there is a special city council work session a week from Thursday, 3 to 5, here in the chambers regarding the water rate study. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember House?
Nothing for me this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthews, you forgot to mention something?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, my apologies to my colleagues in the Indigenous Commission. We had a very rare in-person meeting. We usually do ours via Teams, but we met at the future Indigenous Cultural Center. So that was really exciting. There's a lot of work to be done, but it just really gave us a good feel for the site and the size and the work that needs to be done. So it was a great meeting. We had lunch served and everyone, it was very informative. So just wanted to report that.
Thank you. All right, moving down to appointments. We have an appointment to the Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living, and I believe it's you, Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. I was really impressed with the applicants that we had. Just all of them were so qualified. It was really hard. I tried to speak to the ones that I could and left messages for others, but I would like to nominate Laura Smith as the newest commissioner for the Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. Now we're moving down to item number 8, liquor license public hearings. First, I am going to open the public hearing, and we have staff here to talk to us about the 2 applications. And then I'll take council questions and any public comment.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. My name is Nick Almendarez. I'm a sergeant with the Flagstaff Police Department. I'm before you today to present an owner transfer liquor license application. This is for a Series 7 beer and wine bar license at Grand Canyon Spirits located at 982 Fort Valley Road, Flagstaff, Arizona. The application was filed by Lauren K. Merritt, who is the agent, Ketan Kumar Patel, Maipel Patel, Chirag B. Hai Patel, Devang Kumar Patel, Suren Patel, Vishal Kumar Patel, and Vipel Kumar, who are the controlling persons. In my investigation, I discovered no derogatory records on the applicants and no current or historical liquor violations on the business. I found evidence the applicants had taken the mandatory liquor license training. A representative of the business was invited to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember McCarthy.
Well, I don't have any questions for our police officer. Thank you for being here. But I do have some questions regarding planning and zoning issues. And I just wonder, do you have a presentation or a comment, and then maybe some questions after that?
Hello, Alexandra Pucciarelli, current planning manager. I do not have a presentation. I can share the information that was given to me about this location. It was discovered by staff that the bar was in existence. That has never come through our review process. The owner was made aware that it was in violation, and given the steps that he needs to take to get that resolved. The owner did come in for a pre-application meeting where, again, those steps were outlined, most likely a concept plan review, and then we're optimistic we can move them into building permit. We have not received an application at this point for that concept plan.
Any additional questions? Comments? Do we have any public comment? Does the applicant have anything that they would like to say?
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's Mike Patel with Grand Canyon Spirits. Like process of getting the application in, but it's hard to get any concept plan going. I've contacted more than 5 different either draftsman, architect, or whatnot. Anyways, it's a delayed process, so we'll just like an extension on this particular part of the license. Again, we were not aware when we bought the business that she had not proper licenses. Anyways, we just are wanting to continue doing a bar business once the process is complete and approved. So yeah, we're still in process of getting this concept plan through one of the approved draftsman or architect or whoever we could find, but no one has gone back to us just yet. Hence, the application was not submitted.
Vice Mayor, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious if an extension is a viable option.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Stacy Fobar, your Deputy City Clerk. The state of Arizona only gives the local governing board 60 days to review and recommend liquor license applications. And today is actually the 60th day, so we have pushed it out as far as we can. We informed the applicant once we received the first report that they would need to go through their concept plan review and that we moved the application as far back as we could. So the recommendation is due by 5:00 p.m.
Yeah, I had spoke to the agent who works closely with state, and all they said is extension would be the best option. State has no play in stopping me to have this bar. It's just the city's, you know, it's at city's mercy right now. Whatever we need to do, that's all.
Mayor and Council, if we do recommend denial this evening, what will happen is the application will go to the state with a recommendation of denial from the local governing board, and the state will schedule a hearing to be held in the future. The clerk's office and city staff work together to decide that perhaps the best option would be to have that hearing, since the applicant did not withdraw their application. And if the process is done by then we would change our position as the city.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Hold on just a second, sorry. So no public comment. All right, I'm going to, does council have any other questions? Now, I'm closing the public hearing now.
Thank you, Mayor. Are you sure? I am supportive of this establishment getting their liquor licenses. There's actually two, if I understand correctly, item 8A and 8B. However, considering that there's some planning and zoning shortcomings that need to get resolved, I will make a motion. I hereby move that we forward the application to the state with a recommendation of denial, with the understanding that we will be supportive once their planning and zoning paperwork has been completed properly.
Is there a second?
I have a clarifying question. Is that for the beer and wine bar only, or for both the beer and wine bar and the liquor store? So in other words, item A and B, or just A?
Well, my motion was for both, but I believe the discrepancy would apply to both. Is that correct?
Councilmember McCarthy, it would not. We could recommend approval or denial for Series 9 and approval or denial for the Series 7. So they are being taken as two separate items.
So which one has a problem with planning and zoning?
Series 7, which is item A.
Oh,
Item A? If I understand correctly, item A is the one that has the discrepancy, correct?
Correct. The bar is a new use in the existing retail liquor store, which is legit.
So, Mayor, I would like to withdraw my previous motion, and I would like to move that item 8A be forwarded to the state with a recommendation for denial, and then we can come back and do 8B separately.
I will second that motion.
is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And now B, would you like to make another motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that item 8B be forwarded to the state board with a recommendation for approval.
No, I had a clarifying question because since they're being taken separately, I don't know if there was a separate presentation on 8B or if there were any derogatory remarks that were found on that, because we haven't actually heard on that yet.
Yes, so I can answer that. The next presentation is for the owner transfer liquor license for a Series 9 liquor store license at Grand Canyon Spirits at 982 North Fort Valley Road in Flagstaff, Arizona.
So Mayor,
Excuse me,
if
just
I may, you would need to reopen the public hearing for item 8B then.
All right, so let's do that. I'm reopening the public hearing, and please proceed.
Okay, the next is for an owner transfer liquor license application. It's for a Series 9 liquor store license at Grand Canyon Spirits at 982 North Fort Valley Road in Flagstaff, Arizona. Application was filed by Lauren K. Merritt, who's the agent, Ketan Kumar Patel, Maipal Patel, Chiragbe Hai Patel, Devan Kumar Patel, Surin Patel, Vishal Kumar Patel, and Vipul Kumar, who are all listed as the controlling persons. And in my investigation, I've discovered no derogatory records on the applicants and no current or historical liquor violations on the business. And I found evidence the applicants had taken the mandatory liquor license training.
Thank you, Councilmember House. And just to restate what you stated earlier, there are no planning issues around 8B, around the Series 9 application.
Correct. My understanding is that our records show this as a retail establishment, and so that liquor store would fall under that and be a permitted use.
Thank you. And I understand that the applicant would like to speak?
Yes, no, I just want to thank you for at least getting that part sorted out and have the retail location approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
So I need to remake the motion, is that correct, Mr. Attorney?
That is correct.
Okay. I move that we approve item 8B, and by that I mean forward the application to the state with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second. Sorry.
We have second squared. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving down to the consent agenda. All matters under the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine, unless a member of City Council expresses a desire at the meeting to remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion. The consent agenda will be enacted by one motion approving the recommendations listed on the agenda. Unless otherwise indicated, expenditures approved by Council are budgeted items. Council, is there any item that you would like to pull for separate consideration? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as posted.
And a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving down to 10A, routine items. First, 10A, consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2024-14. And this is our second time reading this ordinance. Hello, welcome. So, Council, do you have any questions of staff? All right, then I will entertain a motion to read the ordinance by title for the final time.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we read ordinance number 2024-14 by title only for the final time.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? City Clerk?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff ratifying the grant and reservation of easements and formally accepting dedications and donations of easements and real property interests, providing for severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your work on this, getting us to this point. Do we have a motion to adopt?
Mayor, I'd like to move that we adopt ordinance number 202414.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving down, regular agenda, item 11A, consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2024-15. So we are reading this ordinance by title only for the first time. And staff, do you have anything to present to us?
Mayor, we've got Jennifer Caputo online, who I believe will be speaking to this item.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Jennifer Caputo, and I'm the interim Deputy HR Director, here to talk to you this afternoon about an update to one of our handbook policies. This is regarding our holiday leave policy. And if you'll recall, earlier in the year, you did approve 2 new holidays, Juneteenth on June 19th of each year, and Indigenous Peoples Day, which would be the second Monday in October of each year. And what we're presenting today is to just include those 2 holidays in our current handbook. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions, council? All right, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I will move to read ordinance number 2024-15 by title only for the first time.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? City Clerk?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending the Flagstaff City Code, Chapter 1-14, Personnel System by amending the Employee Handbook of Regulations, Section 1-50-010, Holiday Leave, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. Moving down to item number B, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2024-21, a resolution approving settlement of the city's attorney's fees in City of Flagstaff v. State of Arizona. City Attorney, do you have anything you would like to tell us?
Briefly, Mayor and Council, thank you. Sterling Solomon, City Attorney. The City of Flagstaff versus the State of Arizona case has gone through the courts, and as recommended, I would reiterate again that you approve the settlement of the attorney's fees in that case as presented here in this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, council? I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we read resolution number 2024-21 by title only.
And a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. City Clerk?
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council authorizing settlement of the city attorney's fees in City of Flagstaff v. State of Arizona et al. Relating to Flagstaff's local minimum wage and its alleged impacts on agencies of the State of Arizona operating in Flagstaff.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution number 2024-21.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. We are down to item number 12, discussion item, post-wildfire flooding update. And for everyone's information, we are going to take a short break before item number 13.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Good to see you. I'm Julie with Peak Engineering, supporting the City of Flagstaff in the delivery of the Spruce Wash projects, along with dozens and dozens of others. And you've got a great team here tonight to give you an update, or this afternoon. Ed Shank, Stormwater Director. You'll hear from Ed. I have Joe Lovrich with J.E. Fuller, Daniel Kelly with Emergency Management, and Jenna Ortega is joining us online to give us an update from sustainability towards the end. So we're going to cover an update on Spruce Wash, and then we'll go into Schultz Creek. Then we'll talk about what things are starting to look like for 2024 monsoon season, and then we can field questions. All right. So as a reminder, for the first part, for the museum flood area, that's 2019, 5 years now, and that impacts the Spruce Wash corridor. So this is Paradise, Grandview, and the Sunnyside neighborhoods. In 2022, we had the pipeline fire. This will be the second half of the presentation, the mitigation there, and that impacted Schultz Creek and into the Rio de Flag, so primarily the Flagstaff neighborhood of Coconino Estates. Right. So starting with Spruce Wash, we had to definitely juggle the schedule a little bit when there was a shift in the ADOT project with the Cedar Fourth Lockett Roundabout project. That got pushed off a year. So as much as we wanted to start downstream and work our way upstream, when that project got shifted, we had to rethink things. And we had to accelerate different portions of the project to reduce the impact on traffic locally. So this is an updated construction schedule. It has only been a year and a half, I can't believe it, since Proposition 441 passed. And there's been so much work done. We still have design that is ongoing. However, we've already completed the Grandview utilities replacements and the wedge clearing in preparation for these next stages of work. Underway right now is the Grandview street reconstruction project and the Linda Vista Crossing project and a portion of the channel. Also, wedge utilities and storm drain are scheduled to start here very soon, which is why the Linda Vista area is closed. Next year, we're looking at a continuation of that wedge utilities and storm drain, then the Cedar Crossing. That Cedar Crossing, that aligns with the fourth Cedar Lockett Roundabout project. We need to tie those two projects together for traffic control. And then we look into 2026. That's when we're kind of at the very downstream end towards the Killip Regional Detention Basins and looking at the Arroyo Seco de Dorotha channel and the Killip Inlet and Outlet. All right, so I know you're very familiar with this map, so we'll just do a quick walkthrough on each one of these projects. Right, so current condition on Grandview. Actually, this is no longer the current condition on Grandview. If you've driven by recently, much of this has been demolished, and crews are working on installation of new curb and gutter, and they're starting on the pavement section. So that new geometry, it's an inverted crown road, so we're conveying a lot of that flood water that was in the front yards of people's homes into the roadway prism. This is going to have a pretty big impact for folks this year. So I'm excited to share. Joe's going to share some modeling results with you to show you what that interim condition is going to be once this is complete. Our goal here is to pave this out July 2nd, July 3rd. There'll be some work that continues after that, but right before monsoons, where we're cutting close, pushing really hard to get that done. One thing that has changed, I think, since we've talked previously, is the curbing along the edges. So we have gone to a rolled curb all along Grandview. It's a modified type roll curb. It's a little bit wider. It's a couple inches taller for capacity, for drainage. And we did this to maintain that capacity in the roadway, but also to lessen the impacts into everyone's front yards. And to be able to also maintain their current parking configuration and needs. So I think that was a great change, and that was vetted through our technical advisory committee, and a lot of study went into making that recommendation. And I encourage you to drive by and check it out. They're doing great work, and it's really fun to see this happening. Residents have been wonderful and very patient. All right, so we move to the wedge detention basin. A portion of this work has started. So the portion being, we are ordering 5-foot diameter pipe, probably in the next week, to begin that construction. So we're gonna pick up some of that overflow from Spruce Wash, and we're gonna carry it down into the wedge. A portion of that area has already been cleared. We've maintained the buffer. I know that was an important element for Vice Mayor. We've got the trees around it. We're also coordinating with Arts and Beautification, Jana and her team to make sure that we're setting this up so if there is an investment in the future for Arts and Beautification, that can be incorporated into this work. Right. Then we have the Linda Vista Crossing. There is a very large hole in the ground at the Linda Vista Crossing, which is why this road is closed. These pipes are coming out, and a new box structure is going through. You can see that square off to the right. That's where we're picking up that overflow and taking it to the wedge and increasing the capacity of this crossing. One thing I do want to point out, I go back here, you see this kind of unattractive metal railing right here. One thing that we've added, and this was through recommendations with meeting with folks, is doing something that looks a little bit nicer. So we are proposing foots fencing for all of our safety rails and safety fencing throughout the project. So that's going to be wherever it's visible from the public way. Right. Then as we're moving a little bit downstream, Linda Vista to Cedar Channel, this is work you'll begin to see here pretty soon as well. A portion of that channel will be sort of an articulated concrete block mat with the idea that the voids in that mat, maybe some vegetation can go through. That'll be on the upper portion of the channel. The lower portion of the channel will be concrete. We've met with many of these homeowners and talked about their impacts to their backyards and worked with them. And again, they've been very patient and accepting and excited to see this project move forward. So we move to the Cedar Avenue crossing. We've got a box there. And in the future, we're going to widen that box, convey more of that floodwater, and again, that foots type rail to improve the aesthetics. Moving further downstream, we have the Arroyo Seco to Dorotha channel. This picks up where the Dorotha box crossing was installed not too long ago. And one thing that we've been, where we're headed now, is that we're going to utilize some of that existing infrastructure that's already in place. So we've been modifying the design. This is still in the works. This is in 2026 is the plan to finish this piece. And then we have the inlet. And so this is all tied with the improvements at Ponderosa Park and how we send some of that flow to Killip Regional Detention Basin and then keep some of that flow in the 60-inch pipe that goes down Spruce and towards Route 66. Here's that piece through Ponderosa Park. We call that the Killip Basin's Inlet. This is an Army Corps funded project. Big thanks to Stacy BK and Ed Shank for pulling that together and adding some funding to our project. That was much needed. So we are looking to move this one forward, and we are collaborating with the pros team on what these improvements through the park look like. First and foremost, it's flood control project, but there are ways to do that to maintain the use of that park, and that's a very important community amenity. And then at the very end, we need to do another outlet structure from Killip Basin and take it out through a pipe to the underground portion of the West Street Wash. Right, so construction impacts right now. I know it's been a challenge for folks. I know initially that first week or so was always pretty tough. We've had the traffic engineering team, city out there adjusting signal timing at 4th Street to help with some of the traffic flow and the congestion there. We've had communications with FUSD. We have an email listserv that we do notifications. Had some calls from residents about making some adjustments to traffic control in the area, which we've done. So we're working hard to lessen the impact to residents in this area, but we just, ask them to hang in there. We're doing this as quickly as possible, and it's going to have a great impact for folks in the community impacted by flooding. So that'll be about a year. And we'll get that done as quickly as possible, but it's planned for about a year that portion of Linda Vista will be closed. All right, and then coming this Thursday, there will be reduced pressure, water pressure, to a handful of residents, or to many residents on Appalachian, Forest Heights area. And Beta PR has gone door to door last week and did door hangers for all of these folks. This happens on Thursday during business hours. It's one day only, but we need to do some system upgrades there, and so folks will just have reduced pressure, but they will still have water. And hopefully all those door hangers didn't blow away. It's been very windy. All right, so now I'm excited to share what it looked like after this great investment. So Joe, I think you're up.
All right, thank you, Julie. I'm Joe with J.E. Fuller, and I'm going to show you some pictures here to give a representation of what we expect to see with the implementation of these projects. So you have 3 pictures on the screen here. The one on the left, it says existing. This is the existing modeling for the 2-inch rainfall event over the whole watershed. And the center is the proposed conditions. So this is after all the projects are completed and in place. And then the one on the right is the change. So this shows the pinks, yellows, oranges to the reds. Those are all decreases in depth. And then the purples and the blues are increases in depth. So we're trying to have a good understanding of how these projects are really going to act after they are implemented, and make sure that there's increases where we want them, where they're channelized, where there's infrastructure, and there's decreases where we want the decreases, where we're benefiting the houses and businesses through the area. So you can see Grandview area is very cleaned up, if you will, in this, where we're putting a lot of water to the wedge, a lot of capacity in the channel across Linda Vista and then down to Cedar, and that inverted crown then provides a lot of capacity in the roadway in the event that an event overtops Linda Vista. Moving a little bit further downstream, same configuration on these pictures. There's a few design iterations still happening, like Julie said, on the lower portion of the channel south of Dortha, but we're having a little bit of water increase in depth in the channel where we want it, and overall from Main Street through Rose Street, a significant benefits to the community as far as decrease in potential water depths. And what that means, essentially, if you're having decrease in water depths, you're almost having a decrease in probability that water is going to get to those places, because it's going to take a larger storm to impact them. So we move further downstream to Killup. Again, you can see the pinks. These are all water decreases from 3rd to 1st Street over to Main, and a little bit of increase in depth that happens in the Killup detention basins, and that's why there's needed this additional outlet in the Killup detention basins over to West Street. So it's a big balancing act of making sure the water is going where we need it to, making sure the benefits are where we need it to be. And again, this inlet configuration that you see on the screen right here, that's in flux right now, depending on a couple of design challenges we're working through. One thing I wanted to point out too is, just for this upcoming year, and Ed will get to this in the sandbagging, is just by implementing the Grandview Road reconstruction project, you have a big impact just because of that. Because by inverting the crown, you're you're allowing more water to flow down the center of the road, not the yards, which allows a decrease depth in people's front yards and against their houses. So, so this is the results, existing, proposed, and changed. So all the yellows and pinks are depth decreases, which helps people with their sandbagging this upcoming year. And I'll turn it over to Ed.
Thank you, Joe. So just to pick up where Joe left off, we did have a meeting, a community meeting earlier this spring where we communicated some of this information for the Spruce Wash projects. So as mentioned, the biggest change for short-term mitigation, so your sandbags and barriers for Spruce Wash, is for Grandview. And that interim condition will be valid for about 1 or 2 years as we complete the rest of the projects. The rest of the projects do need to come online before we see that substantial flood mitigation benefit. But right now we do see flood mitigation benefit for Grandview itself. So we do have that interim condition map, the one that Joe just showed, that is actually on our website, the Museum Flood Projects website. And those, if you need assessments, if you need an engineering assessment for that, to help putting in new sandbags, residents can call that call center number. So that's that same call center number that's been up for a number of years now, that 928-213-2102. For residents south of Grandview, our existing model still is the same for sandbags and for barrier. And with that, we're going to move from museum fire. So we spent this first half of this talk talking about museum fire 2019, and we're going to move over to 2022 pipeline fire in Schultz Creek. We have a system of improvements. You've heard most of this before, all the way from the Forest Service all the way down to the Rio de Flag. And it's really a pretty neat system. It's been a lot of work in the last year and a half. And with that, we're finishing up or starting our last of those projects at Highway 180. So Highway 180 culvert, if you drive up there right now, you'll see the lane changes as Bannicky Construction is working on the culvert currently. Right now it's a little over $7 million, currently fully funded by State Bill 1720, and it will provide substantial flood relief to the Coconino Estates neighborhood all the way down into the downtown. And we expect that to be substantially complete before monsoons this year, so by July 1st. It's a really tight schedule. We're working very hard at it. We have daily meetings out there, weekly for the entire group, daily with the smaller project management group. So again, this project starts near that ACE building on Highway 180. It's a channel improvement, then dual box culverts under Highway 180 near Fire Station number 5 and Grand Canyon Trust. And then it outlets right past Grand Canyon Trust where we have a larger channel or alluvial fan into the Rio de Flag. Our partners on this, we have multiple partners just like all the projects. So our designer is Ardura, SWI Ardura. Bannicky Construction is our CMAR. Then obviously we have other governmental partners, including Coconino County and ADOT. And then also a huge thank you to the state legislator for providing the $8.99 million for this project, as well as for detention basin, regional detention basin maintenance throughout the city. And on these pictures, you can see these are the precast concrete elements. So these are the large concrete tunnels that are created by Rinker and then brought up to Flagstaff, and then they're placed. So on that right-hand photo, that is actually placing those down in the hole. It's really interesting to watch and also quite daunting with the large safety that we have in place for trench control. And with that, I'll punt it back to Joe to talk about some of the modeling for Schultz Creek. Thank you.
All right, quick for my piece. Again, the same format on these maps, existing, proposed, and changed. And the dynamics here is that when Schultz Creek overtops onto Highway 180, we've talked through this in excess before, it wants to go along the road, so down towards Secret School, through the Stavana Way neighborhood, and then it's trying to get back to the Rio. In doing so, it sits in Coconino Estates. It's a dish. So what this project is really focusing on moving the water from Schultz Creek over to the Rio de Flag before all of that. So if you look at the existing map, you can see the depth color along Ford Valley Road. With the proposed condition, you see a dashed blue line. That's where the existing pipe is right now. That's not going to be functioning anymore. And it's going to be replaced with the black solid line across Highway 180 right between the fire station, north of the fire station. And so the changes, you're going to see a little bit increase in depth in the Rio, where we want it to be, and a major decrease all the way through the system. It really, for the 2-inch storm event between the detention basins up on Schultz Pass Road and this improvement, it really dries out the neighborhood from Schultz Creek. Downstream, I apologize, this is a little hard to see. But what you can see is that, like on Mead, that was a big puddle, more than a puddle, but a water ponds there very well. Along Sechrist School, along Ford Valley Road, down Talkington, all of that water is really pushed over to the Rio. So you'll still get local rainfall that falls there, but the water that gets there for a 2-inch event is not going to be coming from Schultz Creek anymore. So that's where we're seeing these long extending benefits all the way down really to Thorpe Park and the Francis Short Pond. And again, pass it to Ed.
And I'll keep this slide short. So for short-term mitigations at Schultz Creek, right now we're recommending everybody keep their sandbags in place until we have that Highway 180 project complete. Now, once we have that complete July 1st, we have been working quite a bit behind the scenes on how we will roll out a program to help remove sandbags. So there will be a program of some level, we're not sure exactly how much, to assist with removing sandbags from the Coconino Estates area. So it will be a huge win. We're talking 2 years after the fire, we will have substantially removed the flood risk, the post-wildfire flood risk for this neighborhood, which is really laudable to the entire team out there that's been working this, and it's a very, very large team. For those who want to remove their sandbags beforehand, again, we do not recommend that, but there are some folks who are itching. If they have clean sandbags, we recommend moving those to Thorpe Park, where we have that Aztec yard, so that folks who do need sandbags can reuse those sandbags. For damaged ones, again, we will roll out a program, and we're working on that internally of what that will look like. So moving that forward, we will have some information probably in the next month. So we're fast moving in the background. With that, I'll move it over to Daniel with Emergency Management for some of our preseason mitigation updates.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Members, Daniel Kelly, Emergency Manager. So like Ed says, I'm just going to talk real briefly about our preseason preparations. So June 14th, we're going to test the museum sirens. We are prepared to move that date to the left or to the right if real world emergencies or weather kind of impacted it, because we don't want to set it off if we're going to have real weather. We will release messages to the surrounding public to give them a heads up that the sirens will be going off. I want to use this time to make 2 plugs to the public safety all hazards and evacuation map. We encourage residents to go to the Coconino County website /emergency management. Look up what zone you live in, familiarize yourself with the zone, and then while you're there, if you haven't already, sign up for emergency notifications. It's real simple, real easy. You can't miss it on their website. And the city always highly encourages that residents purchase flood insurance. It does need to be renewed annually. Most home insurance does not cover flood insurance, flood damage, so that's why we're encouraging this. The city has, and its partners, have done fantastic work, as you know, on flood mitigation efforts, and therefore the city residents get a 25% discount that are automatically applied to their insurance premium. And I will pass over to Jenna.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, members of the community. My name is Jenna Ortega. I am representing the climate section in the Flagstaff Sustainability Office. I'm honored to be presenting alongside so many experts and colleagues from across the city. And although I cannot take any credit for all the great work you just heard about, I am excited to be here to share information on a small grant program aimed at safeguarding Flagstaff homes from flood damage. Flagstaff residents, both property owners and renters, are encouraged to apply for a grant of up to $5,000 per household through the city's flood prevention grant program. This funding can either be provided upfront, so prior to purchasing any materials, or as a reimbursement for incurred expenses. Currently, grant funding can be used for several essential flood prevention techniques for your home. This includes floodgates. So floodgates are hard barriers designed to prevent water seepage through the windows or doors of your home. They're a lightweight and effective solution. They can be permanent or temporary, so you can quickly set them up when needed. They're useful, easy, and light. In fact, we have a demonstration model over at the Sustainability Office for anyone who's interested in checking one out firsthand. Another option through the grant is sealants. So this is particularly for homes constructed of cinder block walls or slab foundations. And sealants can really serve as a good line of defense for water infiltration for those specific types of homes. And they can be applied through painting or spraying to add some additional protection. The last option is a temporary flood barrier. And so this is for situations when flooding might threaten a larger area of your home. Temporary flood barriers offer a really more durable and efficient and less labor-intensive alternative to traditional sandbags. They have a longer lifespan and can be deployed much faster for an easier means of flood protection. So applying for the flood prevention grant is pretty straightforward and hopefully accessible. It takes most people less than 5 minutes to apply. You can utilize our online application portal, which is that first link on the slide. It's flagstaff.az.gov/floodproof. You can also download and print the application there, or just come in and visit us in person at the Sustainability Office. We have paper copies there and can also help you apply. We're grateful to be able to offer the application right now in both English and Spanish, as well as the materials. Applications are open right now. We are processing them on a rolling basis, subject to available funding. So we encourage all residents who are at risk for flooding to take advantage of this opportunity to protect their homes. On our website, you can also find a ton of information on materials. We have pictures of all the different types of materials. You can set up appointments with any of us to ask questions. So really, we want this program to be, easy and something that we can get out, help into the community. And so we will continue to do more in-depth outreach, similar how we did last year of going door to door. We're hoping to get some mailers out to the community with the help from our friends over in Stormwater, getting those mailing lists, and even some hopefully fun events where we can show some of these ways that you can protect your home from flooding. And that is all I have for that. So we can go to the last slide, and I will just say, Mayor and Council, thank you for your time today. We welcome your questions or any comments you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What is the web address if people want to peruse more information about all of these projects?
There's actually two different web addresses. There's museumfloodprojects.com, and then we have our Pipeline West one, which I'll have to look up. It's a few backslashes there, but you can get to it from the Stormwater page. So the Stormwater City page has links to both of those, as well as the link to Jenna's program and sustainability for the flood proofing grant.
Great. Sarah Langley posted flagstaff.az.gov/pipeline west.
I knew she was on it.
And can you reconfirm the water pressure in the neighborhood above Grandview? It's this Thursday that it's going to be lowered?
Correct, during the day,
During the day?
8 to
Thank-
5.
8 to 5. Thank you very much.
And since I'm standing up here, Mayor, if
Yes.
you don't mind, one important thing I failed to mention is that although we have, in the spirit of Bike Month, although Linda Vista is closed, it is still open to bicyclists and pedestrians, and that will continue throughout construction. So folks wanting to do bike to work week or bike to school, they can still use that corridor.
Wonderful. Thank you. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I want to thank all who presented and also the many people involved in the work behind the presentations. I want to thank Jenna with Sustainability for updating on the grant program, which is a great program. And I think sustainability might also be able to, once again, play another role in this. My suggestion to Ed Shank and the team about putting together possible programs for removal of the sandbags. It seems like that would be a good candidate for a volunteer program to be sanctioned by the city, and sustainability helps us oversee those volunteer events. So keep that in mind, Ed. In fact, put me on that list. I've been looking forward to the day where we can go out and start removing the sandbags. I know that's not citywide, but specific to one or two neighborhoods. That's wonderful news. The last comment I'd like to make is again, another compliment to the team, and I'll call out Julie Lead, but there are others, behind the scenes. Council, you get, and Mayor, you get the nice updates here, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of things happening, especially outreach to the neighborhoods. That doesn't always get airtime with you, but trust me when I say it is happening. I can think of multiple occasions where neighbors, especially in the vicinity of Linda Vista and Grandview, have asked for information related to easements, related to property boundaries, related to sandbags, the whole spectrum of topics that we're talking about. And, pardon me, Julie and the team has been very gracious with their time in meeting the neighbors out there and having one-on-one discussions and walking them through these details. So the city is so well represented here, and I just wanted to extend our appreciation for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember House?
Thank you. This question was for Jenna. Jenna, I was looking at the website for the grant program and noticed the section where it says to stay tuned for grant workshops or scheduled office hours. Do you have an estimate of when those are starting, or have they started already?
Thank you for that question, Council Member. They have not started yet. We are hoping that we can get some scheduled within the next week. We are grateful to have a wonderful AmeriCorps member in our office who has been working on the HEPA program and got hundreds of applicants, and they're wrapping that up, and he's going to join me in hosting some of those workshops. So we will get those scheduled soon, and I can definitely follow up with council once that website is updated with those scheduled dates.
Thank you very much.
Council, additional comments or questions? I don't see any public comment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you so much, all of you. Ed, I feel like we don't see you hardly at all anymore.
We'll try to keep the flooding away, and then you won't see me even less, but we'll see.
Okay, and just to restate what I said previously for anyone who wasn't here and didn't hear it, before we go to item number 13, which is the future agenda item requests, we are going to take a short break. So now we are moving on to item number 12B, discussion and possible direction on the airport air carrier incentive policy.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Heidi Hansen, Economic Vitality Director. Today, you'll be hearing from Brian Gall, our Airport Director, and Claire Harper, our Airport Communications Manager, about the Flagstaff Air Carrier Incentive Policy. They will be offering background and employment information, proposed incentives, and they will also share some specific examples for new and incumbent carriers. These policy specifics will be useful in our meetings with all air carriers, and this will also help us to secure, hopefully, additional routes in our future. So we just wanted to make sure that you realize today is a dialogue, so please ask as many questions as needed. Stop them as they're speaking if necessary. And without further ado, I will turn this over to Brian Gall.
Thanks, Heidi. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. As Heidi mentioned, today we're going to be talking a little bit about the air carrier incentive policy at Flagstaff. We do have one currently in place. We're looking at making some updates to that policy to better reflect what we're seeing in the industry and position as well as we have discussions with other air carriers about potential new air service at Flagstaff. I'm going to start today by going over a background of air service at Flagstaff. So currently at the Flagstaff Airport, we have one airline, which is American Airlines, and it's served with daily direct flights to both Phoenix and Dallas-Fort Worth. So our previous air service included United Airlines, which was one of the operators at the Flagstaff Airport until the fall of 2022. So during their operation, they had between 1 and 3 daily flights to Denver, excuse me. And prior to that, we did have a few other carriers. So American's predecessor, U.S. Airways, previously operated at Flagstaff with 50-seat regional jets. Those are smaller than the 70-seat regional jets they currently use. Similarly, when United first came to Flagstaff, they were also operating 50-seat regional jets before moving up to a 50-seater. Before that, if you go back a little bit further, we did have Horizon flights on a 76-seat turboprop aircraft that flew to LA and or Prescott for a time, but that was not a daily flight. So that's important to remember. That was a larger aircraft that was more like a weekly service. We did have, if you go a little bit further back into the late 90s and early 2000s, we did have service with U.S. Air on 30 to 40-seat turboprop aircraft that were daily to Phoenix Sky Harbor. So the reason I bring that up is because that points toward the state of the industry. So if you look back over that history from the late 90s to today, what we've seen is what they call upgauging, meaning the aircraft size is getting larger and the frequency of flights is scaling back. So where we might have had in the late 90s, 10 or 12 aircraft flying to Phoenix every day on a 30-seat plane. Now we're seeing 5 aircraft on a 70-seat plane going on that same route. That's something that we're seeing across the industry, especially with the pilot shortages that was a result of the COVID pandemic. So part of that, we saw a lot of airline employees, including pilots and other air crew, were furloughed or took early retirements. And we see now that the air travel industry has rebounded. Airlines are having a little bit of trouble restaffing those pilots, so that at this point they have a number of regional aircraft shuttered in storage. So what we did see is at the peak, I believe American Airlines had up to 200 regional aircraft parked in storage. That number's coming down as pilots are being added, though we are still seeing some lagging results from that, and also some delays in aircraft deliveries that have affected kind of a trickle down through all their routes. So what we're doing about this, about trying to add air service to Flagstaff, is our air service attraction efforts. And Claire Harper is going to be presenting to you in a little bit some updated versions of our air carrier incentive policy, but she's been leading our air service attraction efforts. That includes going to airport roundtable conferences, where we get to meet with different air carriers and find out what their outlook looks like, what are they looking for in cities and airports as partners, and leading to things like what kind of incentives should we be including in our policy. Additionally, we are later this month attending an air service development conference where we get to meet with individual airlines to talk to them about what Flagstaff has to offer and how our route can fit in their service. We've also updated our passenger demand analysis, which is a study that we hired a consultant to do to show which airports, which routes people are ultimately coming from to get to Flagstaff and where people from Flagstaff are ultimately going when they travel. So that's information that we can present to those air carriers to show them how we can fit into their operations. Now, as I mentioned, this is an update to an existing policy. The previous air carrier incentive policy was adopted in 2019, or was written in 2019, I should say. And that policy included waiving of landing fees for up to 12 months. You can see that we still include something similar to that, but with a few additions. Now, this comes back to maybe the question of why. Why are we bringing this today? Why are we taking the time to update this policy? And the big thing to remember is, first off, travel opportunities for both our community and for visitors coming to Flagstaff is really an overall benefit to the city and the region, bringing in tourists, bringing in other visitors, and giving the opportunity for residents of the region to be able to travel elsewhere. In addition to that, we do get direct funding from air carriers when they lease space and operate at the airport. For example, we get leases from those air carriers for the space they use here at the airport terminal building. We also get landing fees, which is a dollar amount that is generally paid by commercial air providers, where they pay the airport based on the landing weight of the aircraft typically. In our case, it's usually about $1.09 per 1,000 pounds of aircraft weight for those commercial flights. But we also get a lot of indirect funding from air service at the airport. So in our case at Flagstaff, we get everything from grant revenue, where grants are tied to our emplacements. We also get parking revenue. So the more people that are flying out of Flagstaff, the more people we have parking at our parking lots and the associated revenue along with that. In addition to things like car rental revenue. So if people are renting cars from Flagstaff through our agreements with the car rental companies, we do see a percentage of that as well. So there are both indirect and direct ways that we get revenue from our airline partners. Now, I do want to share a couple definitions that I think will help as we get further into this conversation. First, emplanements, which I just mentioned, is something that is partially tied to our grant funding. Now, an emplanement is a paying passenger departing on a commercial aircraft. So those are not counting people coming to Flagstaff, but it is counting the folks that board commercial flights from the Flagstaff airport. Additionally, I wanted to define our landing fees, which, as I mentioned, was that fee that certain air carriers will pay based on the landing weight of their aircraft. Those are both things Claire's going to talk about in our incentive policy in just a few minutes here. Now, next, I wanted to talk about what our trends with emplanements have been. So here's the graph looking back to 2016, showing where emplanements have gone over the years. So you can see from 2016 to 2018, we held pretty steady between about 67,000 and the low 70,000 range. Now, in 2019 was when we added that service to Denver. Shortly thereafter, American added a flight to Dallas-Fort Worth, and we saw our emplanements make a pretty big jump to over 120,000. Now, of course, immediately following that, we had travel restrictions associated with the COVID pandemic, which dropped us back into the mid-60,000s for 2020, before rebounding to about 117,000 in 2021. Now, you'll see a trend after that was United terminating their service to Denver in 2022, which we did get for most of that year, so still a strong year there. In 2023, so this is the first full year we had since that United service left. And one thing I would like to point out is that even though it's lower than everything since 2019, it is still higher than everything we had from 2018 earlier. So 2023, despite United leaving, was still busier than every year before 2019. This year, our emplanements are tracking pretty closely with 2023, so we expect them to be similar to the numbers we saw last year. But I think one of the big takeaways from this graph for me is that our region, the Flagstaff Airport, the city of Flagstaff, had the need for those additional seats. So when we had those flights there, we were filling them, and that's what was shown in those 2019 and 2021 years, which goes back to our efforts to attract additional air service to Flagstaff. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Claire Harper, who's going to talk a little bit about the proposed incentives and the details of our proposed air carrier incentive policy.
Thanks, Brian. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Claire Harper, Airport Communications Manager. So airports of all sizes use air carrier incentives to attract new service. Providing incentives makes launching new service more appealing and reduces the financial challenges prospective carriers face when starting new service. When creating our policy, we benchmarked our proposed policy with other similar sized regional airports, finding that airports our size typically waive fees for 2 years and include marketing funds like our policy does. The Federal Aviation Administration published new air carrier incentive policy guidance in December of 2023, and our policy reflects these updates. And our incentives are available to both new carriers starting service and to our incumbent carrier if they wish to add a new route. And American Airlines is our incumbent carrier currently offering service to Phoenix and Dallas-Fort Worth, and any other airline would be a new carrier. And then we have 3 scenarios where the incentives would be offered. The first is a new carrier adding service more than 4 days per week. The second is a new carrier adding service 3 days or less per week. And then the final is our incumbent carrier adding a new route. Moving on to the incentives for our new carrier for adding service for more than 4 days per week. Next slide, please. So if a new carrier is looking to add service more than 4 times per week, we would waive landing fees, office, ticket counter, and gate rent for 24 months. And then we would offer up to $75,000 in marketing assistance funds. And during our recent conversations with airlines, they've emphasized the importance of marketing funds and incentive policies. Marketing funds are needed to ensure that seats are filled and that the route continues to be successful. And here you'll see some examples of current marketing for the airport and our routes. Moving on to a new carrier adding service 3 times a week or less, you'll see that we have tiered incentives based on level of service. And we did this because we wanted our policy to appeal to all carriers, which may include those interested in initially offering less than daily service with potential to expand service based on demand. So the incentives for new service 1 day per week would be a 25% waiver of airport fees. And then we would offer up to $22,500 in marketing assistance funds for the first 24 months. For new service 2 days per week, we would waive airport fees by 50%, and we would offer up to $3,700 available in marketing assistance funds for the first 24 months. For service 3 days per week, it would be a 75% waiver of airport fees, and then we would have up to $56,250 available for marketing funds to use for that first 24 months. And then our final scenario is an incumbent carrier adding a new route. So that would be American Airlines adding a new route or destination. And that incentive would be waiving landing fees for the new route only for the first 6 months. And then we would put $10,000 in marketing assistance funds towards the new destination or route. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Brian.
Thanks, Claire. So as Claire mentioned, what we tried to do is update this policy in a way that responds to what we're seeing in the airline industry, specifically those services or those air carriers that might be looking at less than daily service in a way that's tiered to incentivize more service, but also not shut the door on air carriers that might have less. As I mentioned before, our previous air carrier incentive policy was relatively short and was focused mainly on waiving those fees for new entrant carriers, no matter what their service frequency was. So today, what we would like to do is talk to you a little bit about this, have a little bit of an open discussion, see if you had any feedback, questions, comments, or concerns about the ideas we put forth here. Depending on what we hear from this group, we will finalize and publish that policy, and then we'll have that available to present to potential air carriers as we move into discussions with them about potential service to Flagstaff. So with that, Claire, Heidi, and I would be happy to answer any questions and hear any thoughts that anyone has about the possible changes to the air carrier incentive policy.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Claire. We have a question from Councilmember House.
Thank you, Brian, Claire, and Heidi. This is not necessarily feedback, and it's not a concern. It's just really curiosity. I'm just wondering, what impact do these incentives and the pursuit of additional emplanements and so forth have on potential ticketing pricing? Because I know that's always kind of been a concern for flying out of Flagstaff, is just the rate of tickets based on being a smaller municipal airport. Does this have any impact on that?
You know, the air carrier ticket pricing is one of those things that's almost like a magic 8-ball sometimes. Like trying to figure out what exactly it's doing and why it shakes out the way it does can be challenging. But I do think the one thing that we've seen, and one of the reasons the FAA encourages airports to encourage competition is that the more competition you have at any one facility, the more you're going to see prices come down. And so I think that that is something that we've traditionally seen in the past, kind of across the industry, which is if you can get more than one carrier at a place, potentially even more than two, you start to see when people have more options to get to where they're going, generally they start to drive down prices or increase frequency in order to compete with each other. So that's a kind of a general statement. I think it's really challenging to say because there are some other factors that go into it. Everything from fuel costs to the availability of pilots, for example. But I think that we would expect this to at least have some effect on reducing ticket prices in Flagstaff.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. My question part is, and I think we had this discussion at some form, maybe at the budget retreats, but do we need, for some of the airlines that we're trying to attract, is there any improvements we need to do to our runways to support different Airbuses and planes?
Yeah, great question, council member. And typically, I think I would say that our facilities are in pretty good shape when it comes to looking at the different air carriers that we've been talking to. For the most part, they're operating regional jets. Now, there are some exceptions to that. For example, some air carriers don't have a regional route. I'll use Southwest as an example. Part of their business model is they use a single aircraft fleet. It's all 737 based, so they don't have a regional version of their operations, whereas American does, like American Eagle. Our airport can generally accommodate those aircraft depending on the configuration. So anytime we get a request for larger than our typical aircraft to come in, we analyze our pavement strength versus the wheel loading that particular aircraft puts on our facilities. And to date, some aircraft of a larger size might require some weight restrictions, but I don't think they're out of the realm of what these air carriers would be operating in. Our biggest need from an infrastructure standpoint is actually inside the terminal facilities. So right now, our biggest limiting factor is the capacity of seats in our hold room. So once you get past the TSA checkpoint, how many people that can hold, plus the TSA checkpoint and bag screening itself. So when you have a larger aircraft come in, especially if it's time to come in with another aircraft from a different carrier, for example, if 2 or 3 aircraft show up at the same time, how can that accommodate that? So right now we have about 210 to 215 seats in our passenger holding area. So if we started looking into some larger aircraft, say of the 737 size, those seat between 140 and 180 on an individual aircraft. So if you added one of our regional jets, you could very easily put that room over capacity. So that's something we have applied for some grant funding for. So far, we've not been successful in receiving any grant funding that would allow us to expand that hold room, but it is something we're looking into. I think from enabling the airport to handle any of the prospective carriers we're talking to, we're in a really good place for really all the regional carriers. When you start to get into the mainline ones, like I mentioned with those larger aircraft, we might need some infrastructure upgrades, but mostly at the terminal facility at this time.
Thank you. And then my comment was that I'm very much supportive of this incentive. I've been exposed to different cities in the past that were offering, not for airports, but different incentives to help their economic growth and vitality, and just expanding us to have at least 2 airlines flying in would help our city as a whole and our travel as well as citizens of Flagstaff. So thank you so much for putting this together, and I'll give a thumbs up to it right now. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? I have a question, Brian. Is there a length of time that we ask the airlines to guarantee to stay in Flagstaff in exchange for an incentive?
That's a great question, Mayor. Thank you for bringing that up. So Claire and Heidi can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe at this point we're not adding a length of time required for them to stay in Flagstaff, partially because of the volatility we're seeing in the aircraft industry, or in the airline industry specifically. One of the things we're seeing is there are a lot of factors that are very much in flux. And so it's really hard to get them to sign on to a lease to come operate at an airport if they feel like they might not be able to fulfill that lease. So to date, we have not proposed adding a length of time to it, but we have added a a maximum amount of benefit based on time. So for example, if an air carrier came here and took advantage of a lease for a year and then left for 6 months and wanted to come right back, that would be prohibited. I think there's it's either a 24 or 36 month prohibition on taking those incentives again if they've terminated service. Claire, maybe you can correct me if I'm getting some of those details wrong, but so far at least we have not added a minimum length of lease or of time of operating at Flagstaff. Claire or Heidi, did I miss anything there?
You did a great job, Brian. Mayor, I just wanted to add that when Barney Helmick, our previous airport director, and I were working on securing air service before, and we were lucky in getting United, one of the things that we were doing were trying to get a different route. Our conversations with United, they weren't originally talking about just Denver, and they were talking about some of what American was doing. And what we were trying to do was not get somebody that wanted to fly the same route at different times, but to go in a direction that, you know, we needed for connection, you know, the East Coast, things like that. So part of what we do is if the route is what we need, the incentives make even more sense. So that's what Claire and Brian will be working on when they go to Jumpstart, which is a huge speed dating conference that would blow your mind if you were there. But they will be looking at being specific on the connections that we need so that the incentives make that much more sense.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any additional questions or comments from council. So thank you all for the update and for all of your work to secure a second airline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before we move into item number 13, we are going to take a 10-minute break. So let's say, well, 11 minutes. Let's say 4:50. Okay, we are ready to get started. We are down to item number 13A and B, future agenda item requests. And we are going to take public comment on both of these at the same time. So I am going to invite the applicant of the second petition up, and he has indicated that he has 10 people here with him who have agreed not to speak on their own in order to have more time for the applicant. So I'm going to give 10 minutes. And I apologize, I am definitely going to get this last name wrong. Dr. John Vadas. Vadas. Well, and then everyone who has signed on with him, would you please stand up? Okay. All right. So please proceed.
Before I start, may I request the full 15 minutes just to make sure I finish? I don't think I'll take that long, but could I ask for that?
Certainly.
All right, thank you. Let me put that down. Okay, good evening, council members and mayor. Dr. John Vadas, and I am a Flagstaff resident. I proudly became an American citizen a few years ago as I immigrated here from South Africa, where I grew up after moving here, from Israel. I find it interesting when the pro-Palestinian group members call Israel an apartheid state, since I've seen it firsthand, and they have no idea what apartheid is. They use words like never again, which reference to the Holocaust, thinking it is smart propaganda. Instead, it is all just lies. When you voted to discuss this resolution, you mentioned it would be okay to at least have an open dialogue and discussion. So if I asked you if we should discuss if kidnapping should be okay to discuss, or murder, or rape, or torture, Would these be okay to discussion, making all of them legal or acceptable? All of which happened in extreme violent and cruel ways on October 7th. There are still Israeli hostages being held today by Hamas, the terrorist group, and possibly civilian Palestinians, such as women, children, elderly, and men. Should we discuss supporting these evil acts and say to Israel's Jews, you are not allowed to defend yourself, you are not allowed to punish those that did this to you, you are not allowed to get your families back, and you are not allowed to make sure this never happens again. The people who brought this resolution forward will tell you that there are 30, 40, even 50,000 men, women, and children, usually they say mostly women and children, that have been killed in Gaza by Israel in this war. Interestingly, how they do not separate the terrorists of Hamas from the civilians in these numbers. Nobody likes war, and I do feel for those innocents affected by these, including Palestinians, including the Palestinian side, although some may not believe it. They will also tell you that the conflict did not start on October 7th, and you need to look at the history of it all. Do you? Dr. Phil said it very well. No, you don't. No, you don't. You do not need to look at anything else to know what happened on October 7th was evil and wrong. But let us talk a little bit about history, since I have the time, thanks to everybody giving me that. So they keep talking about 1948, which more accurately would be 1947. But why are we only going back that far? If we should look at history, we should go further back. I'm just going to go very quickly through a little bit of it. 3600 BC to 1200 BC, the Canaanite Empire. There's no Palestinian state. 1200 BC to 1004 BC, Judges period, no Palestinian state. 1004 BC to 586 BC, the Kingdom of Israel, or Judea and Samaria, again, no Palestinian state. 586 BC to 332 BC, the Persian Empire, still no Palestinian state. 332 BC to 167 BC, the Hellenistic Empire, that is Alexander the Great, still no Palestinian state. 167 BC to 63 BC was the Hasmonean Empire, again, no Palestinian state. And then 63 BC to 324 AD was the Roman Empire. That was initially General Pompey, still no Palestinian state. And so on, until more, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, 1516 AD to 1917 AD was the Ottoman Empire. And as I said, 1917 AD, no Palestinian state. 1917 AD to 1948, so 1917 to 1948, I could just say it that way now. British Mandate, still no Palestinian state. Also, the first temple, Jewish Israeli temple, was built in 1957 BC by King Solomon and destroyed in 586 BC by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. The second temple was built in between 538 BC to 350 BC. We can't be exactly sure exactly when, and it was destroyed in 70 AD. Al-Aqsa Mosque that sits right now on Temple Mount was built at 685 to 715 AD, after all of that. During all these periods, after many Jews were forcibly removed from their land, many remained, and many returned through the ages. There have always been Jews in the land of Israel, even when it was colonized. In 1948 or 47, more accurately, we simply officially got our statehood back, and yet we are accused of being the colonizers. You will probably also be told that the Jews today are from Europe and other places around the world and have no connection to the land of Israel. How can Jews have no connection to their ancestral land that has always had Jews in it? Let's look at very recent history. 1947, that was the UN partition plan. In June of 1948, the Jews just basically got into the land of Israel. In June of 1948, Arab armies surrounding Israel invade and attack. In July of 1948, Israeli army counterattacks Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria that attacked it. Between 1949 to 1967, there were temporary ceasefires with so-called Green Line acting as a border, although it was not accepted by the Arabs back then. 1967, we know of the Six-Day War, where the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Sinai Peninsula were taken in the first 4 days, and the Golan Heights in the last 2 days of the war. In 1982, the Sinai Peninsula was returned to Egypt under a peace treaty. In 1983, Lebanon signed a peace treaty with Israel, and then in 1994, Jordan signed a peace treaty with Israel. Jordan refused to take back the West Bank, which it previously controlled. Not Palestinians, Jordan. And Egypt refused to take back the Gaza Strip, which they originally controlled. Again, not Palestinian. There's no Palestine. Again, showing there was no Palestinian state, as the land was controlled by Egypt and Jordan, and so on. Israel offered the Palestinian people land many times and were rejected every single time. Israel left the Gaza Strip in 2005 in hope of allowing a two-state solution. They did this by removing all Jews and other Israelis from the Gaza Strip, making them leave their homes behind. In 2006, the terrorist group Hamas was elected in Gaza, the same people responsible for October 7th and many other terrorist attacks. Since they were elected, there have been no elections in the Gaza Strip. As to today, we are seeing more violence against Jews and Americans in our own country. The pro-Palestinian supporters tear down American flags, burn them, and deface them. I've seen them post thin blue line American flags with bullet holes through them that they shot themselves. They attack people who do not stand with them. They have been denying Jewish students access to classes at universities across the country by force, just like the Nazis did. And I have pictures of that, so you can have a look if you want to approach me later on. Locally, they shout slogans which call for actual genocide to murder all Jews. People have recorded themselves across the country admitting to want to murder Jews right here in our own country. They shout, and I apologize for repeating this to our police officers over here, but they shout, "Pigs go home," to the police officers and the county sheriffs. The same police and sheriffs that serve and protect people they don't even know. That's their job, including these people that admit they will call upon the police if they are in trouble and need help. That is absolutely disgusting. They claim they were exercising their First Amendment right last week, Tuesday, at NAU. Ironic to enjoy the freedoms in the country you hate. The freedoms they would not have under a regime they want. But let me try to educate some of them if they are watching or if they're here. Trespassing is a crime. You were told to leave the university grounds by 2200 hours or 10 p.m., and you did not. Disturbing the peace is a crime. You do not get to infringe on someone else's rights. Shouting in the middle of the night and not letting students and other residents sleep is a crime. Not obeying a lawful order by police or sheriff is a crime. And when you were trespassed, they had every right to remove you or arrest you. The police and sheriffs did an exceptional and professional job that evening and every other day and night since with dealing with all of these. And by the way, this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer, so don't use it that way. If you're going to use your freedoms in this country, which you clearly hate, yet enjoy its freedoms, at least learn the laws. I'd like to now circle back. I do not believe we should have the City Council discussing this matter for reasons I mentioned earlier, and because this is not a city matter but a federal one. In addition to what I said before, this will further divide our community. I want to make note that I have not called anyone in our community evil. I only spoke to their actions and words. People can do wrong and make mistakes, and it does not make them evil. Young kids learn this when they make mistakes. Does that make them evil? No. The young kids in Gaza that are being taught hate and to murder Jews, are they evil? No. This is child abuse. In case you wish to fact check me on this, you can look at Al Jazeera and Hamas videos that they post freely. So this isn't coming from me, this is coming from them. Finally, I've had a few short discussions with local members from the pro-Palestinian side. The last time, one of them suggested an open forum discussion between members of both sides, as I have suggested prior on other occasions, and I gladly agreed. I've reached out to them since then and got no response. They are being told by their higher-up leaders and organizers not to engage anyone on the opposite side. They're being told to use masks and hide who they are. I will ask them here and now to consider this. Even with all they have said and done so far, I and others I know are willing to sit down with them and talk. There are two ways forward, through discussion or through more violence. I know which option I'd prefer, and I'll leave the decision with them as to what future they want. Thank you for listening. God bless America, and I'm Israel Chai.
Thank you. All right, as we move into public comment, I like to remind people when we have heated issues with a lot of really strong passions on both sides that we're looking forward to hearing from all of you, and we want every person who's going to speak to us to feel safe in doing so. And thus, I ask that you refrain from any outward sign or noise of support or opposition to what anyone who approaches us to speak is saying. So next up, we have Rabbi Dovi Shapiro.
Honorable members of the City Council, today I stand before you not merely to advocate for the support of Israel, but to challenge us all to truly understand the stark contrast between the beauty of Israel and the darkness, evil, and barbarism of Hamas. Israel is a vibrant democracy in a region rife with turmoil. It stands as a testament to resilience, innovation, and the pursuit of peace. From its diverse culture to its thriving economy, Israel embodies the values of democracy, freedom, and human rights that we hold dear. Yet, do we truly appreciate the beauty and significance of Israel amidst the chaos of conflict? In contrast, Hamas, a designated terrorist organization by numerous nations, including the US, represents the epitome of darkness and evil. Its ideology is rooted in hatred, violence, and the indiscriminate targeting of innocent civilians. Do we fully comprehend the depths of Hamas' depravity and its relentless pursuit of destruction? History has shown us that the devastating consequences of silence in the face of evil. The world remained silent as the Nazi Party rose to power in Europe, as a racist incitement spread, and as the ashes of millions darkened the skies of the continent. Today, despite the lessons of history, there are those who in some twisted way choose to support Hamas over Israel, something I will never, ever understand. Just as the world was silent in the past, there are voices that advocate for silence or worse, to support Hamas's reign of terror by calling for a ceasefire that will only embolden the terrorists. But we cannot allow history to repeat itself. We cannot allow the beauty of Israel to be overshadowed by the darkness of Hamas. Despite the temptations of indifference, we must continue to raise our voices against injustice. For the state of Israel, standing as the last barrier against those who seek its destruction, cannot afford the luxury of silence. Let us not be remembered as the generation that remains silent, or worse, advocating for evil. Let us be the voices of conscience, the guardians of truth, and the champions of justice. And I just want to address those who are worried about innocent children. Where is your compassion for the innocent children in Gaza? Where is your compassion for the innocent children in Israel? If you demand a ceasefire today, in a couple of years we're going to be standing in the same place because you could not stand up for evil. You stood behind the terrorists and made sure that Israel cannot finish its job, what it has to do. If you don't cut off the head of the snake, it will come back to bite you. That is what Israel is faced with. And if you have a difficult time facing that moral clarity, you have to look within yourself to understand what do you truly stand for. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Emily Davalos.
I am speaking as a private citizen and only represent myself. I've been a resident of Flagstaff for 25 years. I support the resolution that was put on the agenda for today. I do not support McCarthy's resolution that does not come from the community and is misguided on several points. I also do not support an erroneous resolution that disregards international law. Israel has no right to commit genocide under the guise of self-defense. Please base your decision on international law and not religious books and mythology. Yesterday, May 6th, Hamas accepted a ceasefire proposal. Israel rejected it and then carpet bombed Rafah, where they forced all the displaced Palestinians to go. Carpet bombing of cities, towns, villages, or other areas containing a concentration of protected civilians has been considered a war crime since 1977 through Article 51 of Protocol 1 of the Geneva Conventions. Israel has a phrase they use to describe their strategy of periodic bombardment of the Palestinian people. They call it mowing the lawn. Israel is an occupying force, and as such, it forfeits its right to self-defense against the people it occupies. Since at least 2004, the ICJ recognized Israel as the occupying power. If they can turn off a people's access to water and food, they are clearly an occupying entity. I quote from the permanent observer of the State of Palestine to the United Nations during the UN General Assembly, May of 2021. Israel's invocation of the principle of self-defense as an occupying power is illegitimate and must be countered with a clear response rooted in international law, the same international law that it systematically breaches with contempt, yet has the audacity to invoke when it deems it beneficial to itself. Israel, the occupying power, cannot evoke its so-called right to self-defense to justify the use of excessive military force against the besieged Palestinian civilian population in the occupied Gaza Strip. As reaffirmed by the Security Council in its resolution 1860-2009, the Gaza Strip is an integral part of the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, occupied by Israel since 1967. Israel remains the occupying power and is thus bound by the relevant provisions of the Fourth Geneva Convention and all other relevant provisions of international law, including United Nations resolutions. Israel does not recognize Palestine as a state. As such, it cannot claim the right to self-defense against the threat that emanates from a territory it occupies. There is a legal basis for the armed resistance that took place on October 7th. Under Protocol 1 of the Geneva Conventions, based on the principle of self-determination for all peoples under foreign and colonial rule, Palestinians have a right to armed resistance. They have been under colonial rule of Israel since at least the Nakba of 1947. Under international law, occupying forces have no right to self-defense. Stand on the right side of history with millions around the world. Pass the original ceasefire resolution that was placed on the agenda today. Take a stand against genocide.
Thank you. Next up, we have Deborah Block.
Hello, Mayor, Council. I am neither Jewish nor Arab, Israeli or Palestinian, but I am human, as are they. The history of our species is replete with wars of conquest and annihilation, and it is heartbreaking. I also understand that defense for self or others in the face of aggression is sometimes required, as it was in World War II, as it is in Ukraine. But there is also a point at which self-defense is overcome by vengeance. Vengeance does not bring peace. Vengeance does not bring security. Did our country's response to 9/11 bring peace and security? No. It brought the birth of ISIS out of Al-Qaeda and the return of the Taliban to Afghanistan. More hatred, more violence, more othering. In Israel-Palestine, there is trauma, fear, hatred, and the desire for revenge. To hear Jewish Israeli politicians, other Palestinians, as vermin, when the existence of their nation is rooted in their murder as a people cast as vermin, is beyond heartbreaking. Israel exists, it is not going away. Palestine exists, it is not going away. I don't know how they move toward peaceful coexistence, but it is the only solution. The trauma of the Holocaust and the trauma of the Nakba have girded the extremism on both sides And that is the real tragedy. Both Israelis and Palestinians deserve to live free lives. Radical religiosity in both Israel and Palestine make this impossible. Both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are poison. On behalf of the petition signers, I am asking that you pass the ceasefire resolution as submitted by the citizens' petition. There has been 7 months of sustained violence, including the destruction of Palestinian infrastructure, hospitals, and universities, to combat a hideous ideology which initiated an attack on Israel on October 7th. Hamas will not be defeated by the overwhelming military response of Israel, supported by the US government and our tax dollars. Today, the IDF entered Rafah. There is no humanitarian zone in Gaza. There is only death, by bullet, by bomb, by disease, or by starvation. Netanyahu has not made release of the hostages a priority. It is his own skin he is saving by fomenting more hatred. The killing must stop. Our government must stop allowing it. But the backdrop today is that both America and Israel are internally riven. Will we choose democracy or will we choose illiberalism? Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn Wiseman. And then Frederica Hall.
Mayor Daggett, City Council, thank you and city staff for expediting this discussion of our resolution for a ceasefire in the war in Israel and Palestine. The severity of the situation in Gaza demands of us that we do what we can, as we can, to end this madness. With the invasion of Rafah today and the closing of 2 crossings from Gaza into Egypt, the already dire situation for the people of Gaza will only get worse. President Biden spoke today about recommitting to heeding the lessons of the Holocaust, and I quote, to revitalize and realize the responsibility of never again. As a Jew whose grandparents lost most of their family members in Europe, I have taken the phrase never again very seriously my whole life. But I don't only apply that phrase to the Jewish people, as Biden did today. I apply it to all who are unjustly persecuted, misunderstood, and made the victims and scapegoats through cruel policies, genocide, and war. The Jewish people have suffered for centuries. In my family's tradition, and I think for most Jews in the diaspora, this suffering has led to empathy for others. I recognize that the creation of Israel, which was to be a refuge for persecuted Jews and survivors of the Holocaust, was also at the same time the cause of the destruction of the communities and lives of the Palestinian people who lived on those lands for centuries. For decades since then, the rights of the Palestinian people have been flagrantly violated in Israel and the occupied territories, and mostly diminished and ignored here in the United States. Since the war and the killing of 34,000 people in Gaza, along with the destruction of their cities and retribution for the murders in Israel by Hamas on October 7th, we really can no longer ignore the tragedy that has been going on there for 75 years. We have to confront our culpability here in the United States. We provide the bombs and weapons that enable this destruction. Biden complains about Netanyahu and the right wing in Israel, but does not hold them accountable for using these weapons against civilians. Biden also said today that we have forgotten October 7th. I haven't forgotten October 7th, just like I haven't forgotten 9/11 and the devastation and pointless wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that followed. Israel is not making itself safer with this war and may have produced a generation of young people who will be seeking revenge. I only hope that instead the young people of Palestine and Israel come together to create a new future in peace. It's incumbent on us here in the U.S. to join with the majority of the countries of the world and urge our government and immediately call for and facilitate a permanent ceasefire and stop this senseless killing. Thank you.
Thank you. Frederica Hall and then Laura Frankie.
Good evening, City Council and the rest of everyone. Blessings to you. When all of our world has been set up for profit at any cost, and the majority of the world's people are in poverty, when greed has been steadily destroying our democracy and our Earth's ecosystems, what difference does it make to the dead? to the orphans, the bereaved mothers and fathers, the sisters and brothers and friends, the homeless, and all of those suffering from the greed that creates war. What difference whether the mad destruction is wrought under the name of totalitarianism or the holy name, or liberty or democracy? All war is wrong. It's the greatest failure of humanity. It's unmitigated evil. Violent exploitation never brings success. It only brings more war and more suffering. Freedom won through bloodshed or fraud, propaganda, or lies is no freedom at all. It only breeds violence and more suffering. There is no winning peace with war. It never has done that, and it never will. The only way we can get to peace is through peaceful means. There is no peace through oppression, racism, classism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. Sorry, I can't say that word correctly. For thousands and thousands of years, we have been at war. Genocide after genocide, ecocide after ecocide, a never-ending war. Our history drowns in the blood of war. It's about time we learn to stop. If we do not stop, we won't have a world. For-profit war is destroying any chance we as one whole world, one people, have to save ourselves from climate disaster. We jointly created this difficulty. There is no escape from this truth. War has never and will never bring peace. War has never brought peace. Humanity's never-ending war is suicidal. International Court of Justice was created so that we would never have another Holocaust. But the dangerous and shameful, willful disregard of the findings of the International Court of Justice are opening the gates
Frederica.
to our world hell. Thank you.
Laura Frankie, and then Kyle Nitsky.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Laura Franca. I live in Sunnyside, here in Flagstaff, Arizona. Again, I'm going to bring you some words from my friends, John Running, Sue Bennett, photographers here in Flagstaff, Arizona, where they have photographed in Palestine and surrounding areas. The book is from I Am Palestine. Today, America stands nearly alone in the world in a wholesale support of Israel policies and a continual denial of legitimate needs of the Palestinian people. Why? We do not accept the notion the Western world can somehow make up for the Holocaust by giving Palestinian to the Jews, and in doing, make refugees of 4 million Palestinians. This is 1980, these words are coming from. We protest the continued American subsidization of Israeli government policy of attack, occupy, annex, and cry for peace afterwards. We arbor the idea of American-made phantoms are being used to drop American-made phosphorus and cluster bombs on people living in refugee camps. Pictures alone cannot bring change, and we've been seeing a lot of pictures lately. People do. We, the people of the United States, we, the people of Palestine, of Israel, Muslim, Christian, and Jew, we can bring change. And in aftermath of the summer of 1982, the premise of our work remains unchanged. The people are more alike than different. And like people everywhere, the Palestinian people need a permanent home in their original homeland. And now I ask for a permanent ceasefire. If you can please take action and pass the permanent ceasefire resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyle Nitsky, and then Don Keller.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Kyle Nitschke. I'm here today as the co-executive director of the Arizona Students Association. We're the largest undergraduate student association in the state and represent 500,000 students. Our students have made it very clear to us that we need to be here tonight. I actually took the last week off to go to Florida. I thought NAU finals would be a really good week to take off for student activism. It turns out it was not. Our students are understandably incredibly upset about what is going on internationally, and this ceasefire resolution is now the bare minimum of what you need to do as our city leaders. What happened at NAU last week, I was able to watch the live stream in Phoenix. NAU Lumberjack did a great job, SJP was on one side, and I got to see the other stream from an old professor. So I felt like I was there, even though I wasn't. And what the Flagstaff Police Department and the NAU Police Department did to those students was disgusting, and it makes me sick. The ceasefire resolution is an easy, whatever, just do it. You guys now need to take action and talk to the Flagstaff Police Department about why they were there and on campus. You need to meet with President Cruz and student leaders who were arrested and talk to them. This should not be happening in your city. I wish I took more time to write this down properly, but pass the ceasefire resolution and then do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Keller and then Kelhan Kelly.
Excuse me. Thank you for your attention. As a longtime resident of Flagstaff, I urge our city council to adopt the Gaza ceasefire resolution. In the 6 weeks since the council first heard from the public, the world continues to be shocked by the level and intensity of death and destruction in Gaza. The most idealistic among us, younger students are expressing their shock and outrage even in the face of the older establishment's determination to suppress and rationalize it. In Gaza, nearly 35,000 dead, 80,000 injured, with many more thousands unaccounted for under the concrete of destroyed buildings. 2/3 of all these are women and children. An estimated 3/4 of the built living environment has been destroyed or damaged beyond use, with virtually all institutions of higher education destroyed. Entire large neighborhoods have been flattened. 146 journalists killed. Major hospitals and health support systems have been destroyed, with famine and disease widespread, necessary aid absent or wholly inadequate. The Israeli military itself has lost 612 members since October 7th. Overall, the collective punishment and disproportionate response to Hamas's tragic and self-defeating attack of October 7th are glaring. This has been brought about by rules of engagement widely considered by international bodies to be criminal, with genocidal results. Chief among these, besides apparently shooting everything that moves in large areas and dropping 2-ton bombs on residential complexes, is the Israeli acceptance of 15 to 20 civilian casualties for a single targeted Hamas member, whether an actual combatant or not. This has resulted in the death of entire extended families and neighbors. In addition, many targets are being selected using artificial intelligence with lax human oversight resulting in high error rates. Is this the future of war? There are better ways to defend a country. Our own politicians and industries are complicit. In particular, for Americans at this time, it must be asserted that if your logic says that supporting Palestinian rights is anti-Semitic, there is something very wrong with your premises and assumptions. The question should not have to be asked, do Palestinian lives matter? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Kelhan, and my apologies, Kelly?
Good evening. My name is Kainoa Kelly. So just bad handwriting, I guess. After the public comment regarding including the adoption of a ceasefire resolution a few weeks ago, the council spoke on how surprised, impressed, and glad they were that it was a calm and respectful discussion. I was not surprised at all. Despite the media's best attempts to misrepresent those who oppose Israel's actions in Gaza, we are a peaceful movement calling for the end to mass bloodshed and collective punishment of the Palestinians. And anyone who speaks with hate in their heart is intentionally misrepresenting us or opportunistic, an opportunistic actor. We know who we are, and we are steadfast in our convictions. I also think there may be some confusion among the council as to why this is an issue being brought to the city council. And, you know, I'm not here to change anybody's minds on anything. I don't think it works like that. You have enough statistics and history books available to you. And there's no expectation that a ceasefire resolution passed by the city of Flagstaff, Arizona, is going to end this bloodshed, especially on the eve following Israel's rejection of a ceasefire agreement. But we have called and written letters to our representatives. We've spoken to our family, friends, our colleagues. We've peacefully protested, and some of us have been arrested for doing so, and there are not many avenues left for us. We are asking you, our elected community leaders, to make a statement that this is not what we stand for, that we stand by our community members' families who are living in tents in Gaza. I know some of them spoke already, and displaced from their homes while our own tax dollars fund the weapons that are killing them. We are asking you to follow the 100+ municipalities that have adopted a ceasefire resolution, like Atlanta, Chicago, Minneapolis, Albany, Akron, Seattle, Charlottesville, Cincinnati, St. Louis, and the list goes on. It is the absolute bare minimum that we can do to show the levers of power that we do not want to fund this anymore. I believe the city council begins every meeting with a land acknowledgement. At least it's written into the agenda. And baked into that is the acknowledgement of the history of genocide and occupation committed against Native Americans. And you know, if nothing changes soon, I would not be surprised to see in a few decades those same land acknowledgements being given in Israel. When our words and letters and cries and protests are vindicated by the lens of history in decades to come. But I'm not here for vindication.
Thank you. Lindsay Falkenberg and Fayez Dahlia.
Hi, City Council. It's my first time speaking at a City Council meeting, so a little nervous. I agree with a lot of the arguments already made around why you should pass a ceasefire resolution. I thought I would maybe speak a little bit to why I think this is your responsibility as the City Council of Flagstaff. I just want to take this opportunity to remind you that you're our representatives. I wake up every morning feeling so powerless in this situation. And we elect you to make decisions for us, but we also elect you so that you can be our voice. You have more power than I do in this situation. I know you don't have like the power on a big national global scale, but you have more power in Flagstaff than I do. And I see that you are in a really hard situation. You have constituents on both sides of this issue who are asking you to make a decision, and that has to be so hard. And so I know that means that you must be having to look really inside and outside of you to decide what you're going to do. I don't envy you that challenge. But I hope that you will look at this situation to the best of your ability and listen really carefully, and I hope that you will use your power and your voice to call for a ceasefire resolution today. I hope you'll lift up the voices of young people on the NAU campus who have risked their futures in order to try to make as powerful a statement as they could about the wrong that they see in the world right now. And yeah, I just want to remind you that there are a lot of hearts breaking in this situation, waking up every single day feeling like there's nothing that we can do about this. And I think that there are some things that we can do about it. And I know last time, Deborah Harris, I heard you say, let's have some conversations, let's bring people together. I would be there for that, and I think that this ceasefire resolution is also incredibly important to make a statement about what we know is happening in the world. And I ask you to use your voices to uplift mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Fayez Dahlia and Eric Descheny.
Good evening. How are you? As Americans, we are concerned about stopping the war because every bullet, every pump, every plane that the IDF uses is American. So it's a war by proxy for us. And we are ashamed to have that kind of war in our name. This war should be stopped. And I do understand that some Zionists here trying to ask for a resolution to be passed for Israel right for self-defense. This is the most sarcastic call from those people. Those people who are committing genocides, killing people, they are trying to make the Palestinian people submit to their will. And as if it is crying wolf all the time. It is those people who always think they are victim. And they are perpetrating the most heinous crime ever seen in our life. By the way, these crimes have been going for more than 75 years. The only difference between now and then, before we know who controlled the media and you couldn't see it. We couldn't see it. Now, every one of us control the media and we see everything in front of our eyes. As one professor once said it, in the United States, we do not know what's going on the other side unless we cross the Atlantic. Once we're in the Atlantic, we see what's going on. But here, we're locked. We're in a box. Now, thanks to the students, thanks to the American people who are trying to stand up for rights and saying enough is enough. The Zionists disassociated themselves from humanity, from morality. And they want everybody on this earth to follow them. We can't do that. We cannot do that. We have to stop this, and we have to fight for justice and not to have double standards. Justice for white people, and when it comes to brown people, there is no justice. Justice has to be for everybody. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Eric Deschini and Jawad Dalia.
Mayor, members of council, thank you for affording me the time to speak. My name is Eric Deschini, former member of the Arizona House of Representatives, citizen of Flagstaff, father, son, relative, among other things. I was thinking about today and thinking about what I would say, and I was reminded that I stood in this very spot nearly 5 years ago. I was asked to speak on behalf of the Native communities here on Indigenous Peoples Day, October 14, 2019. And I was thinking about what I had to say that day. And the bigger picture, of course, is Indigenous Peoples Day is to counter Columbus Day. And you hear a lot of comments we've heard today and elsewhere about genocide, genocide, genocide. Well, when you hear that, as a Native person, it immediately rings a bell, because we're still experiencing the ill effects of genocide by the United States of America. It wasn't that long ago either. And, when I gave my speech, there was a part in there that had about 5 or 6 paragraphs that went, Indigenous Peoples Day with Indigenous peoples present wouldn't be Indigenous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when I think about today, and you fast forward to now, and I say the same thing, Indigenous Peoples Day, which is every day, including today, wouldn't be, with Indigenous peoples present, like myself, wouldn't be Indigenous if I didn't sit here and say, gosh, there's a right thing to do, given the history of where we stand. There is a right thing to do, given the history of the United States. there is a right thing to do, especially when we look at the tens of thousands of people who have been murdered, and the majority of them, 70%, give or take, are innocent women and children. All of that rings in our ears, our being indigenous peoples right down the street. You're surrounded by Indian country. There are 22 federally recognized tribes in Arizona, well over 500, nearly 600 across the United States. I know I don't stand alone when I say there's clearly a right thing to do. And to simply pass a resolution that says cease fire, that's not a difficult thing to do. And so 2019, I stand here again, 2024, and I'm simply going to say, pass the resolution because it's the right thing to do. You can rewrite history regardless of what has happened in the past. Yeah.
Thank you. Jawad Dalia, and then Zvi Shni.
Hello, thank you, council members. Today we're here because we are advocating for a ceasefire and become members with other cities that added that to the resolution. We do have as well another resolution trying to be proposed where Zionists are trying to say that Israel has the right to defend itself. I don't think this is the appropriate timing, of course, to say that a country that is killing over 34,000 people since October the 7th and injured over 78,000 people. And right now, as we speak, Gaza is cut into about 5 different sections. Each section, they kept on saying, go south, go south. Right now, they're at Rafah, which is the last section that's left. And today, as we speak, they're bombing them and killing innocent people as well. So to say that somebody has a right to defend itself, this is not defending yourself. This is genocidal. Palestinians are the indigenous people of this land and has been there since the beginning of creation of earth, you could say, dates back. So to say that people have the right to defend themselves, this is not defending yourself. This is genocidal. You know, there's over 100 journalists that have been killed. Almost 80% of those people that were killed are children and females. So I don't think that's considered defending yourself. That's considered murdering. That's all I have to say. You know, a ceasefire would be great, of course, so we could add that with other cities. Nothing else to add on to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Zvi Shni and Peter Vadas.
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members, I'm here to speak on behalf of my people and a fair resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Truth matters. There's been a Jewish presence in the land known today as Israel for over 4,000 years. The Bible testifies to this. We are indigenous to the land of Israel. The name Palestine was given to Israel 2,000 years ago by the Romans in an act of cultural genocide. History matters. The recreation of Israel was forged amidst Arab antipathy toward the Jewish people that existed prior to May 1948, when Israel declared its independence after a UN vote that was in favor of statehood for Israel. Yet, 5 Arab countries attacked the fledgling nation founded as a national home for the Jewish people, including refugees from the Holocaust. Facts matter. Peace plans have continually been refused by the Arabs and the people group who began to identify as Palestinians with nationalist aspirations in 1967 at the behest of the PLO, a terrorist group formed in 1964 by Yasser Arafat. Yet, prior to 1968, the PLO made no claim to the West Bank or Gaza. It was formed for the destruction of the state of Israel from the river to the sea. Both the PLO and Hamas have never been committed to peace, only destruction. Context matters. On October 7th, Hamas, along with Palestinian civilians raised on an ideology of hatred, breached Israel's security fence in southern Israel and committed unspeakable atrocities. Israel acted out of defense as a sovereign nation with the goal of eliminating Hamas. This is strategically challenging because Hamas built an underground infrastructure. Consider the following. The Gaza war is against Hamas, not the Palestinians. If a permanent ceasefire occurs before Hamas is eliminated, then they will regain power in Gaza and remain true to their genocidal intent, the destruction of Israel, the death to Israelis and the Jewish people as stated in their 1985 charter. We saw this demonstrated in horrific detail on October 7th. Justice matters. Hamas must be removed from power for the sake of a prosperous plan that will bring peace to the region. Only then can the right of self-determination for the Palestinian people come into full fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Fadaz, and then Tyler Lawhead.
Friends, comrades, council members, they spoke here about ceasefire quite a lot, not of peace. I haven't heard one word of peace so far. They are chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, not including Israel. It has to be only Palestine. This is anti-Semitic and call for genocide of all the people, all the Jews still living in Israel. Disguising into the so-called peaceful protest, but they gaslight all over and lie all over in all their statements. Hamas is a genocidal organization. It is clear about that. They stated it and commits all possible despicable crimes, but they blame them on Israel. Israel commits genocide, according to them, with no evidence whatsoever. The only democracy in the Middle East with independent judiciary that does handle any possible unlawful acts that are committed during war or not. They are not genuine and honest people fighting for justice. They are social supremacists and fascists. Social supremacists because they believe that their values are superior to other people's values, our own values. And fascists because they place the group and collective above all the individuals. Free Palestine from Hamas.
Thank you. Tyler Lawhead, and then Adam Shimoni.
Thank you, Council. First, I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak and for Councilmember McCarthy for bringing this resolution forward. I'm hearing a lot from both sides about Hamas this, Israel this. And from my perspective as a community member and somebody who's new to this topic, it's clear to me that this issue really just brings to light a larger issue, which is systemically how poisoned our country runs, our so-called democracy. And I think these citizens here, the ones who are in favor of a ceasefire, are just tired of giving our tax money to fund intentional murder and genocide from one state onto another people. You can argue about historical context, but the context is clear. Over the last 75 years, it has not been an equal sharing of the land in this area, which was once shared over several thousand years in the past. This is an occupation. It is very clear that the state of Israel, not the Jewish people, are intending to wipe out a culture. But this movement, the reason why there's so many students protesting is not about right or wrong or this or that or getting Hamas or Israel. It's about love. I really believe it's a message of love about our commitment to follow through on human rights and democracy and freedom for all people. That contradicts right now with the systemic way that the U.S. is set up economically with our military-industrial complex. It is not cohesive. We are living in a contradiction. And this movement is about spreading love and promoting people's rights and the right for them to be free and to be themselves without being occupied and militarized. The lowest form of democracy is what we're seeing right now with an ethnic state taking over another. But the highest form of democracy is local government and city council. I know that we are just a small city, but we can join the ranks of other small cities like Nogales, South Tucson, in really making a statement to the state of Arizona and the federal government that we, the people of the United States, do not want this to continue. And if the federal government continues to act in contrary and act complicitly with genocide and murder of Palestinian journalists, of all 12 universities, of housing units, it's clear that the US is supporting this, and it's clear that the people do not support this. You all as a city council, you have the opportunity to make something really, really great happen, to stand up for human rights and democracy, which is what our Constitution and our country has claimed to be about for 200 years. I really believe city council is the way we can make change. Federal government is very convoluted, lots of, again, systemic things going on. At the state level, a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, but at city council, this is where movement starts. So I urge you all, please, to consider voting and passing this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Shimoni and then Lorenzo Gomez.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, good evening, leadership, members of the public, staff. People are experiencing a tremendous amount of pain today, and the entire region is traumatized and mourning. It's currently set up as an us versus them reality, with violence being the only option being explored. The current leadership in Israel, to me, is the most problematic that we've seen in a long, long time. And for them to be at the helm of this situation, this horrendous occurrence that occurred on October 7th, and the response that Israel's going to take is extremely concerning and problematic and has been absolutely a nightmare. Over the decades, I've witnessed wars in Israel with Gaza and issues within the West Bank firsthand. And I've always wondered why the approach we were taking was the approach we were taking as the country of Israel. I always felt that too many lives were being killed, and we were never really planting seeds of peace to promote a future that could be one of which everyone feels respected, welcomed, and at home. Prior to October 7th, the destruction and the killing and the violence in the West Bank was getting to a point that was intolerable. And my father and I often would talk about how something horrendous is going to happen to Israel soon. October 7th happened, and that incident was a reality. One that I'm very personally impacted by, and know a lot of people that are still hoping and praying that the hostages are alive and will one day be brought home. Since October 7th, the goals that have been stated by Bibi and the country of Israel have been absolutely inflammatory and unacceptable, in my opinion. Goal of eliminating Hamas is not possible. I keep sending videos of kids who have lost their parents to my family members saying, kill them now. They're a Hamas recruit in 10 years, 20 years. Just kill them now. If the goal is to eliminate Hamas, why not? Just wipe them all out. And unfortunately, we've seen way too much death, and including the invasion of Rafah, which saddens me both in hopes for the Palestinian people and out of hopes for the hostages and their well-being. So social media has allowed us to witness this firsthand, and violence doesn't solve violence. In wars, there are no winners. Too many innocent lives will grow up to hate each other because of what is happening today. In closing, we have a responsibility as Americans with our tax dollars, and if passing a resolution puts pressure on those who lead our states and our nation, then pass that resolution and put some pressure on those above us. Because we need accountability, transparency, and the defunding of this war and a ceasefire now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lorenzo Gomez and then Zachary Rodriguez.
Hello, council members, Mayor Daggett. Today, I'm Lorenzo. I am a community member, I'm an NAU alum, and I'm a community organizer here. Today, I'm here to speak in support of the petition ceasefire resolution introduced by an amazing community of people who want nothing more than to be on the side of humanity and compassion. As of today, over 40,000 people have been killed as a result of the war on the Palestinian people. This includes all of the innocent people lost on October 7th up until now. This is no longer about religion. This is about land ownership and exertion of power. Living on these lands, many of us intimately know the destruction that can result from the desire for more land and expansion of one singular way of understanding the world. As we sit here providing land acknowledgements and remembering the bloody history of indigenous tribes, it is important to understand why the link between that struggle and the one in Gaza are so similar. I'd rather not focus on the long history of Palestinian resistance and the Israeli government, but rather why it is important that we as a city decide to take our own position on it now. As a council, you are the most representative governing body in regard to the people of Flagstaff. We have entrusted you to advocate for our needs and wants as a community. Local government matters for this reason. The many meetings I have sat through with federal and state legislators across multiple states have taught me that only people of sufficient standing, which is you all, have a large enough say to sway higher governing bodies. This is why we need you right now. We as a community and a majority of Americans have an overwhelming desire for a ceasefire that will allow for direct aid of starving men, women, and children, one that will allow for genuine discussion about the resolution to ethnic cleansing, misunderstood boundaries of religion, and the importance of human life in all capacities. Each of these are steps we once had to take to facilitate our own slightest of amends to Indigenous people here, ones that we're still working on today. We need those in power to reflect openly and honestly about the part we have played in the unfolding of this catastrophic disrespect for human life and dignity. I am not asking anymore, I am begging you. The reality is that Palestinians have been in long support of the autonomy of Native people in the United States, such as our city that we as a city claim to be too. They have stood with us at Standing Rock, Turtle Island, and even here in the place we call home. Students are currently risking jobs, education, and their futures to stand with the people of Gaza. And it is not to call for more harm. It is to call for peace displayed by their commitment to their cause and their desire to affirm, in their own words, that the sun shines on all of us, Zionists and Palestinians alike. It is time we continue to right our wrongs and stand with the innocent lives lost to an avoidable conflict. We have the opportunity right now to be on the right side of history, the side that stands with peace, community, and progression of all people. Thank you.
Thank you. Zachary Rodriguez?
Good evening, Mayor, Honorable Council. This is my first time ever speaking in front of City Council, so I'm understandably a little nervous. I'm going to make this as short and simple as I can make it. What happened on Tuesday night at NAU and what's been happening across the nation was absolutely abhorrent and disproportionate to a peaceful protest where people were laughing, sharing stories, singing and dancing. Not once did the faculty reach out to the faculty of the college reach out to the students until, from my understanding, roughly 4 hours until the curfew, which they passed on a pure hearsay rather than on paper. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is a statement that has been shouted from the rooftops as a message of peace and not one of violence. Israel is already free. What is there about Israel to free? The answer is simple. Pass the ceasefire. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All right, we have at least one online commenter.
Mayor and Council, I have Janet Wessels. Janet, you may go ahead and unmute yourself and address Mayor and Council. Janet, you may go ahead and unmute yourself and address Mayor and Council.
Mayor, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties. We'll ask Janet to send her comments to the public comment email.
Thank you very much. All right, so we are going to turn it inward and have council have a discussion. And we are going to take the two petitions. First, we're going to talk about the ceasefire resolution and Councilmember McCarthy's resolution. And when we're finished with that, then we are going to have council indicate whether they desire to have the second petition moved forward for further discussion. And before we get started, I don't usually do this, but I would like to speak first and share a few words that I've written down. It's challenging to always be articulate up here in front of everyone on the fly. So first of all, I want to thank everyone who has called us, written to us, and has shown up to share your thoughts about this enormous issue. I mean this sincerely. Your humanity and passion is inspiring. As a citizen of the world, I'm pained by the devastation and violence we're witness to, and want solutions that allow the Palestinian and Jewish people to coexist. I feel fortunate to be mayor of and live in a community where we can have these difficult and passionate discussions, because not every community is like this. And it spoke to me, those of you who mentioned that we're the closest to the people, and that is what I think is one of the most beautiful things about this form of government and the city council, where you can speak directly to us anytime you have something that you want to talk about. There are some places around the world where you can't have these types of conversations, and if you can't speak your mind and talk to one another, I'm not sure how you have an engaged community who empathizes with each other and is willing to hear each other out. It's very important to me, and I say this every time we have a discussion that's tends to be full of passion. It's very important to me that the people of this community feel safe, feel respected, and feel heard. And although, as a citizen of the world, I'm heartbroken by the pain and anguish that we're discussing tonight, this body was elected to represent the community we serve. We're counted on to deliberate complex local issues, adopt policy, and act for the betterment of our community. And therefore, I won't support either of these resolutions that are before us. Councilmember McCarthy, I know you wanted to say something.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I've been to Israel twice. I've studied the history of that region. But before I get into that, I would like to say that much of my family comes from Ireland. I see similarities between Ireland and the Mideast. Britain invaded Ireland over 400 years ago. Fighting went on until a two-state solution was accepted. No one is completely happy that Ireland was divided into British-controlled Northern Ireland and the independent Republic of Ireland, but peace is held for over a quarter century now. Israel and the Palestinians must agree to a two-state solution. Both sides must stand against all violence. I hope that our president can convince the competing sides that these two things must happen. Right, wrong, or indifferent. If these goals are not realized, we will experience a millennium of death and destruction. There has been a plethora of discussion on this issue before and tonight. Predominantly, the comments have been that the blame is one side or blame is the other side. I suggest a different approach. For the sake of world peace, I will consider supporting a resolution, but only if it is rational and does not support one side against the other. Here, which some of you have read already, is my resolution, my proposed resolution. This is a resolution of the Flagstaff City Council calling for a just resolution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Whereas the Hamas attacks on Israel killed over 1,000 Israelis and took hundreds of hostages. Whereas the Israeli attack on Gaza has killed tens of thousands of Palestinians. Whereas, as my mother said, two wrongs don't make a right. Whereas the war has led to massive destruction and health issues, including starvation. Whereas both sides will try to, quote, push each other into the sea, unquote. Whereas both sides will try to push each other into the sea unless a permanent two-state solution is agreed upon. Whereas every time a Palestinian is killed, it motivates more terrorists. Every time an Israeli is killed, it motivates more reprisals. Whereas injustice is a great motivator. Whereas there is acute danger that the conflict is spreading to the broader Mideast and beyond, as evidenced by the recent attacks on and from Lebanon, Israeli attacks on Syria, attacks on the Iranian consulate and alternating reprisals, and attacks on Red Sea shipping. Whereas a two-state solution has led to peace in other countries, for instance, between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, even though neither side could claim a clear win. Whereas organizations like Ultimate Peace have shown that young people who live in separate but parallel realities can create pathways for a brighter and more equitable future together. And finally, whereas if these issues are not addressed in an acceptable manner, the violence will continue forevermore. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Flagstaff City Council as follows. The Council urges the President of the United States to help negotiate an Israeli-Gaza ceasefire, return of the hostages, and a peaceful, long-term solution to the war. A solution that includes a two-state solution where Palestinians and Israelis agree to borders, where all sides can live in peace, and where all sides agree to assail violence. Hopefully pass this evening. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthews?
Thank you, Mayor. Jim, I look forward to your campaign for U.S. Senate. And I only wish
I
that
hadn't
the
thought about
time-
that. I'll think about it.
I only wish the time that you spent on that was instead spent on our water rate study, because that's what's going to really impact our citizenry in the coming weeks. One of our speakers, and I also want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and all the emails that we've received. This is one of the wonderful things about our local government is that our community feels safe to come and speak what's on their heart, even if it's stuff that is going on nationally or globally, things that we do not influence. I'm not one to follow other cities just because they did. I think that it's incorrect. We were sworn in and voted in to represent our city and talk about, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things that are going to impact each and every one of you in your pocketbook and in your household. We vote on water rates and trash rates and stormwater infrastructure and all kinds of stuff that are really important to us at this level. There is a structure of government. I'm, for one, will send letters and emails to state and U.S. officials on matters that they vote on. One of the speakers tonight said it's our job and I agree, to advocate for local needs and wants, and that's correct. But we don't have just one group of people wanting one thing here. We don't always get it all right, and we can't always make everybody happy. And this is one subject that the only thing that it does is cause division in an already very divisive society. We've got presidential elections coming up this year, and I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot more of things that we could all get very emotional about. And we'll want City Council to do a resolution which just creates division. It doesn't move the needle one way or the other. I think all of us as human citizens want peace all over the world, and the atrocities going on in Israel and other countries in the world are awful. I can't stop it, though. And making a statement only divides our country. I, too, have been to Israel. I've driven through beautiful communities that look like the west coast of Santa Barbara that are Arab, Muslim Arab community, live in peace and harmony, prosperity. I don't know enough about all the history between Palestine and Israel. I know that so much of it is fueled by politicians and people that don't really care about either side. And I feel my heart breaks for the innocent Palestinians and the innocent Israelis that are caught in the middle of this horrific tragedy. And I hope and pray that our president and our government elected officials step up and assist in a fair and equitable ceasefire, but it's not at our level, and I appreciate what the mayor said. She said it more eloquently than I did. I want to stop all the petitions tonight. I'll be voting no on all of them because we can get wrapped up in these global issues, but we have a lot of local issues to focus on, and it's our job to focus on those issues. And I'm thankful that we have a platform for all of you to come speak. And thank you all for just really sharing your hearts and your passions. And I hear you on both sides, but I won't be moving forward none of the petitions or Councilmember McCarthy's resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm following suit with you, Mayor, in that I have written out most of my comments for tonight. I want to start by thanking all of you who have come to speak to council tonight and on past nights, in person, by email, and in other conversations. I want to thank those of you who have shared your thoughts and your fears with me, who have provided me with resources and learning tools, and who have added immensely to my own thoughts and considerations, both for our conversation tonight and those I'm having beyond these halls. I know these conversations are not easy. I want to commend those who spoke up for the first time tonight before council and embrace that level of bravery. These conversations are not easy for us here on the dais. They're not easy for our city or our staff. So I want to acknowledge that courage and bravery that it takes for each of you to come forward and offer your voices in these conversations. Tonight's conversations are asking us as your Flagstaff representatives and civic servants to weigh in on a deeply complex and vexing question. The question of historic responsibility when confronted with present injustice, genocide, fascism, and hate. I have agonized over this matter over the past several months as we have seen the situation in Gaza become a matter of global, then national, and now local agony and discourse. I say that I agonize over it because it is agonizing. The more I invest in learning the histories of conflict in the region and the conversations about its local impacts to our Flagstaff community and citizens, the more I'm weighed by the magnitude of it all. But one thing that stood out to me in my reading has been this. The weight of justice and injustice is immense and it's immeasurable. To carry the weight of the whole world, its wars and its wrongs, is unbearable. But so is the weight of silence in the face of oppression. One thing I know and can say with certainty is that the answer to these questions and this weight is not indifference, but opposition. Because silence in these times, indifference to what is happening, is in my mind greater and so much heavier to bear than the liberation of stating in unison and union with all those who stand on the side of freedom, justice, and peace, that enough is enough. What's not clear is what that refusal to remain silent looks like. Calls for a ceasefire and an end to conflict have been complicated and unsatisfactory. The conversation has been weighed down by the conflation of politics and policies with people, with the combining of conversations of Israel, of Palestine and their neighbors, of occupation, and with conversations of free speech and self-determination in the United States, clashing and competing interests that do not seem to always have the heart of the matter, the human lives caught in the middle, in mind. And what I fear most, beyond the historical lens that will be placed on present-day complacency and silence, is the same lens that will be applied if we make a choice that does not add to the conversation, but instead only adds to the noise. When we open these meetings, we speak a land acknowledgement that recognizes the traditional stewardship of Indigenous peoples, their histories, their sovereignty, and their right to self-determination. This calls to mind for me two failings on our part as an American society and government system. First, it reflects what I see as our failing to recognize the complex fact in the conversation around Gaza and the atrocities happening in that land, that this conversation is also a matter of acknowledging similar rights to sovereignty and self-determination. And second, that we have failed both in our acknowledgement of what happens on the lands we occupy and in our support of the relationship we have formed over time with Israel. I think back on the long history of the relationship between the United States and Israel, what President John F. Kennedy referred to as our special relationship that has shifted and evolved over time, all presumably from the consistent goal of reaching eventual peace in the Middle East. In that vision of support for peace, we as a nation have conflated partnership in securing a region and seeking peace in that region to turning a blind eye to actions on behalf of a state that did not align with that vision. What we have sought in terms of securing the Middle East and what we have described as efforts towards peace has too often failed to meaningfully advance peace for the people and recognize not only the complexities of relationships between peoples in the region, but also our inability to truly speak into or address them as outsider influencers. I don't believe we can effectively work toward the goal of peace, the support of a viable two-state solution to advance human rights and social justice, and the redress of our own shortcomings in our nation's attempts to influence these matters through a resolution that cannot effectively capture those complexities. That call, I believe, is an independent one. I believe we all as individuals and as a community have a responsibility to add our voices to the call for peace and a two-state solution that would end the atrocities being suffered by the people. What I do believe we can speak to collectively is a call for us as a community to do better what states and nations have failed to do at all. As I shared in recent thoughts on the war in Gaza and legislation that was moving forward to combat anti-Semitism in our own nation, we can recognize the rights of Jewish people to self-determination without denying the right of Palestinians to the same. We can denounce the actions of a state without discriminating against or hating its people. We can acknowledge the complexities of these conversations without reducing ourselves to infighting and hateful rhetoric. This is why I cannot support the resolutions being presented here tonight, though I have to add that I do support much of the language of the resolution proposed by Councilmember McCarthy. I have added, and I will continue to use, my voice to speak for peace, opposition to genocide and hostage-taking, and the leveraging of human lives for political gains. I have and will continue to stand against injustice and advocate for a better future. I have and will continue to call for accountability among our state and national leaders when it comes to how we must defend human rights and how those with the power to control our interests and investments cannot leverage those through silence or complacence because to speak up for what is right is deemed, quote, too costly. I have and will continue to stand with those calling for change, demonstrating against complacency and injustice, and walk beside those who march for awareness and active support of what is right. If council decides collectively to support the resolutions being presented, I will continue to use my own voice to speak as an independent citizen. Because while I don't necessarily oppose the intentions of these resolutions, I cannot fully support the expressions of them. To my Jewish brothers and sisters and the broader Jewish community of Flagstaff, I stand with you. To my Palestinian brothers and sisters and the broader Palestinian community of Flagstaff, I stand with you. To the young people who are standing in opposition to war and hate and genocide and injustice, and to all those who are standing against the same, and to all who stand on the side of peace and the fundamental rights of life and liberty and justice for all, I stand with you. I have and I will continue to stand with you, and all I can do is beg your understanding and the forgiveness of those who cannot support where I stand tonight, especially if we can agree on the broader conversation about peace. Thank you, Mayor. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, I'm sorry that I'm not there tonight. And I want to thank everyone who spoke. I appreciate tonight's conversation and want you to know that I listened and I learned a lot from all of you and the words that you spoke. I asked a community member who is deeply involved in this to send me information so that I could do more research on all sides of this issue, because quite honestly, it's so complex. I don't feel like I had a good understanding. I have a better understanding, but I certainly don't feel like I have the understanding to weigh in on something that has so many layers and history. And I want to thank that community member for giving me the information. It was very helpful. I do not want to further divisiveness in Flagstaff. However, I do support an open conversation from all sides. I do support peaceful coexistence, and I appreciate the person in the audience that used that earlier. It was a great term. And I do support a future of peace. I believe these conversations need to happen, but maybe more so in our community and not so much in these walls. Like I say, I appreciate everyone and your thoughts tonight, but it's my job to represent our entire community, and supporting one petition and not the other would not be fostering that mission that we have. So for those reasons, I will not be supporting either of the petitions that are put forth tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor and then Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. Thank you all up here. Thank you, Councilmember House, for your incredibly thoughtful and well-articulated comments. I did not prepare any remarks ahead of time this evening other than the thoughts I've just been putting down as I've listened to what has been an incredibly respectful and admirable sharing of feelings and positions. For me, above all else, I pray for peace. I want to recognize that peace requires courage, and it requires courage from everyone who has endured an injustice or experienced evil. And in war, everyone caught up in it has endured injustice and evil. That's what I believe. Those who suffer need the courage to stop the fighting if the cycle of suffering is to ever cease. It is through this logic that I would generally be on the side of calling for ceasefires and for all forms of violence against others to stop, and why I would lean towards supporting some sort of call for a ceasefire tonight, and why I applaud Councilmember McCarthy for drafting his own language that caters more specifically to what we would want to say and advocate for up here, rather than becoming the mouthpiece or the voice of another entity. All that said, I want to acknowledge that as I sit up here and I come to these conclusions from a position of immense privilege. I was a professional community organizer for over a decade, and one of my closest operating principles is only those who aren't close to a problem can afford to philosophize about them. So if I'm going to remain consistent in my logic, I need to recognize I'm someone who's up here philosophizing about something that is very real and very painful and very close to others. I could talk about this all evening, and I would never be doing anything more than philosophizing. I want to say that I feel that I really understand many of the opposing perspectives that have been expressed tonight. It's true, I really do. But that's just a consequence of my privilege to philosophize about all of this. The second I start to break down the ins and outs of the various points that have been made tonight, I begin to betray the recognition that this isn't my struggle. What I'd like to rest on here tonight myself is something that I can attest to in my capacity as a council person up here. And that is whether or not we're in or out of our lane by providing a platform for this conversation to happen. The answer to this question is reflected in how many people are in this room and how respectful the dialogue has been. This conversation is important. It clearly matters to many members of our Flagstaff community. I'm proud to provide an arena where these conversations can occur respectfully, safely, and in an orderly manner where the dialogue can feel, I don't know, somehow official. I don't know, it's not much, but it's something. It was Dr. Vade that said there are two ways forward with this. There is discussion or there is violence. I have to say I fully agree with that, and I'm gratified that for my part, I can help create a platform for the former rather than the latter. That's where I'd like to leave things for now. I'm getting a sense from the room that we're probably not going to be forwarding either resolution at this time. But I want to say, above all else, I pray for peace. And I'm proud of the role that I've played up here, what small role it is to do my part in our community to allow for these conversations to happen and to allow for healing to occur.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
I'm going to make this brief. I do appreciate everyone that has come out tonight. I hear you. I feel you. The only thing that I know that's going to happen if we were to pass this resolution was that it would further divide our community. We've been through that already. We don't want to do that again. And that is not to say that this is not an important issue. It is critical. It affects all of us in one way or another. But we can't solve it from here. But what we can do is we can take care of the people in our community. So if you're Palestinian and you're hurting, we want to help you heal in whatever way we can. If you're Israeli, Jewish, and you're hurting, we want to help you heal. We can't do anything about what Israel will do, what Palestinian would do with what Hamas is doing. We can't control them, but we can control this community. And we can be caring and supportive and loving and respectful of one another. And so, yes, I do get emotional about some of these things, and this is one. I have no clue about the broader picture. I'm not an expert in this matter. I've read about it, I see a lot on TV, I read, but I'm not an expert. Many of you are much more of an expert than I am. And so what I am gonna ask people to do is I'm gonna ask us as a community if there's any way that we could reach out to someone, not everybody, but to someone, just one person, and see what we can do to help them with that healing. And I don't know what that is. I have no clue. But I can guarantee you that I will be reaching out to those who I know are a part of this conflict, and I will be trying to do whatever it is that I can as a human being to make it a little easier for you. And so with that, I won't be moving either one of these forward. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, before you speak, because the items are combined under 13, item A is a little bit unique because we're at a point where two resolutions are actually being considered here tonight by council, and those require a motion, second, and a vote. Item B, under our rules of procedure, only requires whether or not there are 3 council members willing to move the petition forward to a work session later. That said, I think the best thing would likely be for you to just call for a motion on either of the resolutions under item A. If there is no motion, it dies, or if there's a motion and no second, it dies for lack of a second. If there is a motion and a second, then a call for a vote. And then you could move on to item B.
So you're saying a motion for either the McCarthy resolution or the citizen-submitted resolution, but we don't have to have a motion on both?
No, just call for a motion on either.
Okay. Is there a motion on either?
I'd like to move that the McCarthy resolution be passed by council. And I accept that this is probably going to go nowhere. But Ms. House, I particularly appreciate your comments. And I think if this were going a little differently, you might be able to come. We could do some edits to mine, make it better. And Mr. Aslan, I appreciate your comments. As far as this comment about it dividing the community, I don't think my motion divides the community. I think quite the opposite. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
I will second Mr. McCarthy's motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
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 So,
Mayor, if I could clarify.
Yes, please.
Those aye votes on the question of opposed, they were nay votes. So 5-2. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, moving on to B, the fair. Are there 3 council members who wish to advance this to a future agenda for discussion? All right, there are not, so it will not be moved forward. All right, so I will give a minute for people who would like to leave the meeting to leave, and then we'll continue with our meeting. All right, we are ready to continue with the rest of the meeting. Item number 14 is an open call to the public. First up, we have Stephen Young. It looks like perhaps Mr. Young has left. Next, we have Wendy White. Wendy has left. Dennis Givens.
Thanks a lot, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council staff, citizens. I just want to let everyone know that you guys do a really good job. You guys are all wise. I've been going to like 10 City Council meetings, and I just want you guys to know that you should be proud of yourself. I learned so much from all of you, and yeah, keep your head high, and great meeting, and good job, and keep up the good work, and go Lumberjacks, too. I wanted to say that all the time. All right, peace.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Sterling Solomon.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. There were some comments made earlier tonight about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's the official name of the church. And I'm honored to be a member of that church, and we've seen a great exhibition of First Amendment speech tonight, and that includes the right to religious speech. I just wanted to invite anybody who wants to know more about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to ask me any questions about it if you have any concerns. I have two great friends I could even introduce you to answer more questions on that. But I did want to clarify for the record, the proper name of the church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And with all the respect that I give to the proper name for other religions, I would just ask for the same respect to be given to the church that I belong to. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, informational items, 2 from Mayor, Council, and staff, and future agenda item requests. I'll start with Councilmember Matthews.
I don't have anything at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Harris.
I'm just going to take a moment of personal privilege and just say thank you very much to Team Flagstaff when I was not feeling well. And I just also want to say that we have an amazing fire department, and we have an amazing EMT people in our city. Unfortunately, I had to use their services last week, and I could not have been in better hands. And so I want to thank all of them personally. They were so kind, so respectful. I can't say enough about them and how comfortable they made me feel. And so I just want to say thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Glad you're well and up and at 'em. Nothing for me tonight.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Sweet. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. I wanted to thank all of you for the great dialogue tonight and the thoughtful conversation. I continue to learn so much from everyone on the dais, so thank you. And I look forward to coming back from Miami and talking more about this conference I'm at. So have a good night. Thanks.
I hope your elevator gets fixed.
Not yet, nor the AC. It's hot in my room. It's been a blast.
Councilmember House.
Nothing for me tonight, thank you, Mayor. But I did want to ask Councilmember Harris if there was any information she could share on how Miss Cleo's tea party went.
Oh, I'm sorry. Miss Cleo's Tea Party was an amazing success. We had lots of fun, lots of great raffle. You all need to put it on your calendar for next year, the last Sunday in April. And I was joined by 2 of my fellow council members, and they had a great time. And so, thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, just a couple of things. Last week, as was mentioned, Vice Mayor, Councilmember McCarthy, City Manager, Deputy City Manager, and Christine Cameron went to DC for our annual lobbying and to make sure that we keep our projects on track. Prior to that, I went with the U.S. Conference of Mayors to lobby specifically on homelessness and housing issues, and it was pretty remarkable to see 50 mayors from around the country advocating for the same thing, which was additional vouchers and relaxing some regulations that sometimes prevent veterans from being able to access these vouchers. And it was just very powerful. And we had 2 straight days of meetings from 7 in the morning until we would meet after we were up on the Hill or in the White House. And I felt very privileged to be there. Saturday is train day at 10 a.m. at the Visitor Center. And I really want people to put this on their calendars. The community water rates drop in at the Aquaplex from 11 to 2. and it is on Saturday, May 18th. And also, there is a rate calculator where you can look up how much, what your water rates are likely to look like in the future. And it's cleanwaterflagstaff.com. So please come to that meeting and talk to staff about this issue that is really, really important to every resident of Flagstaff. City manager, I said that you were there too, right, in DC?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, when I looked at you, I thought, did I say city manager? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Very thoughtful comments. Thank you, council. I don't have anything to add.
All right, and I'd just like to echo everything that was said earlier about learning from each other. There were some very profound things said tonight from audience members and from people up on this dais, and I appreciate it and appreciate you all very much. So we're adjourned.